Hello, everyone, and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I'm Julian Musha. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson,
Hello.
and we are here to talk about Ahsoka Part 6, Far, Far Away. We're going to be breaking that down scene by scene, as well as providing our overall impressions, doing a complete review. If you're new to the show, we, hence the name, cover Star Wars on the small screen, which is where it lives right now. God, I just pray that someday they come back. Like, I know that they talk about these movies, like, oh, we're
Yeah.
gonna make one. There's gonna be a Thrawn movie someday, maybe. I don't know, but I'm telling you, I want them. I want the movies back. I'm ready. Hook it to my
Same.
veins. Yeah. And you know what? To be honest, if there was a new movie, not that there has been since we started this whole podcast, but if there was, we'd cover it. So it's a bit of a misnomer. Anyway, full spoilers for obviously this whole season of Ahsoka. Full spoilers for most of stuff in Star Wars, Rebels, Clone Wars. Like, there's really nothing that I think that if you've been watching Star Wars, we're going to talk about it. Oh yeah, Panda Express in the good. By the way, good to see you back, Panda Express in the chat.
Hey.
We're doing this live. We do this live weekly, Wednesdays, 8:30 p.m. Central, 9/8 Central. As we're used to from what our kids watching cartoons.
Yeah.
But yeah, Panda Express says rip the Taika movie. Yeah, there's the rumor is this. I don't know. I've seen it only from a not quote unquote official source, though it's strongly hinted that the Taika Waititi movie that's been in production or feels like it's been in production, announced a million years ago, is likely dead at Lucasfilm. So just add that to the pile of dead bodies over there behind Lucasfilm.
That's a bummer because he's somebody that I would trust to make a very good Star Wars movie.
I agree. There's been a backlash against him recently, and
Why?
It feels so unjustified because he made Thor: Love and Thunder, and people didn't like that movie.
But didn't he also have something to do with Ragnarok?
Yeah, he also directed Ragnarok.
Yeah, it was great.
Which most people agree is pretty great. Some people, there is a small contingent of the MCU fandom that thinks that movie doesn't take the Ragnarok concept serious enough, which I think is a fair critique. But overall, I think that movie's pretty good.
Yeah.
So there's been for some reason, you either live long enough, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, if I can quote Batman. And he's apparently been on top long enough to see himself become the villain. So there's a contingent out there that people that for some reason don't seem to like him. I'm not part of that group. I love all of his work. There's a new movie on Netflix called The Breaker Uppers that is produced by him, and it looks
really
super funny.
Is that the one that has? Wait, no, I think I'm thinking of something else. I don't know.
It's a New Zealand movie. It's set in New Zealand. It has New Zealand actors in it.
Oh, okay.
And
it's not like the stacked cast one, right? Because there's
no.
Oh, okay.
This is about this. This is about the idea that if you wanted to break up with your significant other, you would hire these two people, and they would do it for you, right? So the very first joke is that they arrive and they like sing a little song to this person.
Oh my god!
Like, Ashley doesn't want to be with you anymore.
Yeah,
like that kind of thing, and then they just leave, and it's like so. Anyway, there's a whole thing about that. Anyway, it looks very funny. I'm probably gonna watch that. I don't watch a lot of Netflix anymore, but
that sounds like something I would watch. But
The Breaker Uppers.
Yeah, I was recently disappointed. Remember when I was telling you about that Nicolas Cage movie where he's Dracula, and I was excited about it? I was bummed because I don't know. I was hoping for more
Nicolas Cage.
We Do in the Shadows and less like what's that movie Warm Bodies. I don't know. It just wasn't. Wasn't.
You didn't vibe with it. I've been meaning to watch it.
It was fine. It was perfectly fine. It had funny moments, but I was just expecting it to be just a little bit slightly different.
That stars Nicholas Hoult, right?
He's in Warm Bodies also,
which
is maybe why.
I really like Nicholas Hoult from The Great. Speaking of R.I.P., that show's also been canceled. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Obama. But sorry, that's an internet
South Park thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, but what was I talking about? Oh yeah. It's really good.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's enough non-Star Wars talk. I have one other anecdote to tell before we start this. So while I was rewatching, you were talking about how the last couple of weeks how we've had technical challenges. You got your mic back. Everything seems to be working now. It's really great. We were like, oh, the things are going smoothly. And I was
Ah.
sitting down to rewatch the episode, and I was taking my notes, and I was about halfway through when the table, our coffee table, exploded for no
What?
reason. Nothing was touching it. There was nothing happening. Winston was lying down on the ground, just being a good dog, and I was just sitting there typing away on my computer, and a massive bang. I look over and just glass everywhere. It's one of those
Weird.
coffee tables where you can put stuff under the glass, so like it just
Yeah.
collapsed down onto a bunch of other stuff. So I had to spend like half an hour cleaning it, putting the dog in another room, cleaning up
Yeah.
all the glass, and then I spent another little bit looking up why the table would explode for no reason.
Was your super hot laptop on it?
No, nothing was
Oh.
touching it. Nothing was
Weird.
touching it. Exactly.
You know what it
Apparently
was?
what was it?
Ghosts. 100%.
God damn it. Those goddamn
Just-
Force ghosts.
Yeah, ghosts.
Yeah.
Poltergeists.
Anakin can't control his dark side Vaderisms
Yeah.
again. Actually, I have a whole thing about that. We'll get into that. But
Okay.
there's apparently two possibilities that because it's tempered glass, it's more common with tempered glass, but largely considered extremely rare for glass to just break without impact.
Yeah.
Like mostly what was on top of it was a pillow, so it's like
Okay.
And then so
Yeah.
anyway, apparently it's there's a possibility there is a defect with the manufacturing where like it can sit dormant for years. This little like defect of nickel that can one day pop its head up and just burst the glass, or it's
Huh.
a temperature thing, but it can't be a temperature thing because it's inside and
Yeah,
nothing was
but I
touching
mean-
it.
I don't know. Unless it's like temperature as in like humidity and like that kind of stuff.
Here's
I
the-
don't know.
okay,
Look, I don't know.
Here's one other possibility. Okay,
Okay.
I saw Winston about an hour before. He licked part of the table. I've never seen him lick the table before. Right?
Okay.
So somehow maybe his tongue broke it.
So
I don't know.
Your dog licked the glass, and then as it dried,
Very lightly.
as it dried, that just a little bit of moisture just shattered your
Maybe
table.
it's possible. I'm
That's
saying
really
I don't
funny.
know. I don't know, but it feels like I witnessed a miracle, like or a curse. I guess maybe one or the other.
I'm going with ghosts. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
So-
Well, ghosts can be both miracles and curses, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway,
I've been
so-
watching that show Supernatural because I've never seen it before, and I need
Wow,
something to watch
you got a
during
lot.
the day.
You have a long road ahead of you, but don't worry.
It's not good. It's a really
Hey,
bad
what do you
show.
mean? It's pretty fun. You don't like their car? It's a pretty sweet
It's
car.
like every episode is like, guys go to small town, hot girl needs help, whatever. There's a demon.
It gets better
and
as it
then
goes.
They leave. I don't know. Fair enough. I mean, the first season it's really bad. I need something to watch during the day when that's not like a show
It's
that
a
Adam and I
really
both
good
watch.
It's a really good background show, 100%.
Yeah, fair enough.
I never finished it. It's like 13 seasons or
Is
something
it?
crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. I just,
But-
yeah, I like Buffy, so I was like, okay, this is like along those lines. So.
It gets more Buffy-y later on.
Fine.
I would say stick with it. But
Yeah.
you'll probably.
But anyways, that's where I got the ghosts from because there's spooky
Right.
things in there.
Yeah, the house is probably haunted. We also have mice, and we've been putting out traps and
Ooh.
poison. But these mice are very smart and pretty cute, if I'm being honest.
Ugh,
I had
no.
pet mice when I was a kid. It's not my fault. I couldn't
Yuck.
have real pets, and so anyway, we have traps everywhere. Everywhere we've seen the mice be, when we put peanut butter, apparently like peanut butter, all this stuff, and poison. They just are so bold. They'll just come out as we're watching TV, kind of like look at us and like walk away. It's so annoying. Even Winston saw the dog the other day. He's like, "What the heck?" Yeah. doesn't
Get a
know.
cat. It's a good fix.
Yeah, that's what Kara said, and I'm not doing that. We're not getting a cat. We're not getting another animal to solve an animal problem. We'll just have more animals.
But they smell the
Anyway.
cat and then they won't come around anymore.
Yeah, but then we have a cat to take care of.
Yeah, they take care of themselves.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm a dog person.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm me and Dave Filoni, dog people.
I can tell by this episode that Dave Filoni's a dog person.
100%. Well, I mean, is this just this episode that gave it away?
Well,
or?
no. Yeah.
Yeah, no, probably
As a
not.
segue into Star Wars talk.
Yeah, let's get into
Yeah.
it. So, quickly, just a reminder, just a little bit of housekeeping. So, Follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast on Twitter, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and head over to our website, towerofbabble.ca, to find everything that we do. You want to help support the show, head over to patreon.com/Tower Babblecast. We do a monthly film club for our Patreon subscribers. We just did City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, which was late, technically. That was supposed to be August movie. And it was very fun. We thought it was a very enjoyable episode. You can go find that in our Patreon feed. We have selected the movie for October, because I got a little ahead of myself and forgot that we still have to pick a September movie. But so I can announce that we're gonna do Donnie Darko. Is the pick for
I
October.
love that movie. I'll come back for Donnie Darko.
Jeremy literally renamed his son Donnie, so we'll
really,
yeah, it's
cute.
A part of it is the movie. 100%, he's a big fan. So I haven't seen it in probably 10 years, so I'm excited.
Oh, really?
To get into
That's
that.
a movie that I've watched multiple times because I quite enjoy it. It's a very good movie.
Well, and it's time travel-y, timey-wimey, so you got to watch it multiple times to really get it.
That's true.
So September is still wide open. Taking suggestions, I'm leaning towards Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That's what I'm leaning towards right now. A movie I haven't seen in also well over a decade. So probably 20 years since I've seen that movie, to be honest. Anyway, so that's what's on tap for that. Let's get into it. So overall impressions, I think, of the episode, I want to get into that, but I have to make one comment before we do, which is about last week's episode. So I've been thinking about the Anakin Vader Force Ghost situation. I've had people ask me, is that a Force Ghost? Is that a figment of her imagination?
Right.
Or, some other third option. I don't have an answer for that. I still think that it is his Force Ghost.
I think so too, yeah.
And a representation of his consciousness in the Force. But I was thinking about the kind of flashing between the Vader and Anakin situation. And here's what I think. And again, I don't really have any way to prove this. And this is based on some of the things I've heard on other podcasts and YouTube videos and some of my own pondering. But I think that the reason he's going back and forth is not so much deliberate to kind of teach her a lesson, but I think that because he's now one with the Force, right? That both the light and dark side of his personality are kind of like fully charged, right? So the good side is really good and the bad side's really bad. And I think that they kind of take over, it kind of like, think of the daughter and the son. Right. That they both kind of live in him at the same time, and that so when he goes dark, that part of his personality fully takes over. And it's kind of not within his control so much as he kind of lives in this kind of duality of both personalities existing at once within him, right? Vader and Anakin. And that based on his emotions or based on what's happening or based on, I don't know, whatever, the strength of that light side or dark side kind of fully takes over and embodies the light side and embodies the dark side. That's kind of how I was reading it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you bring up the Mortis stuff, because Adam and I were talking about that too, because I don't know, in that whole, if anybody remembers, in that whole Clone Wars arc, the whole thing was the dad wanted Anakin to stay and like control, basically, right? The whole son and daughter, light, dark, all that. And the daughter ends up dying and her life essence goes into Ahsoka. So Adam was like, oh, do you think that like maybe when Ahsoka dies, like her and Anakin not have to, but her and Anakin like start controlling, like make up that like equilibrium again or something. But that was interesting that you brought that up. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I think it's a little bit of him teaching her a lesson and showing that side again. And then, but maybe also it's like her own like subconscious kind of bringing it out too, because she's like fixated on it and worried about it and thinking it's partly her fault. So she kind of needs to metaphorically and physically like fight Anakin again. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like it's like she needs to get over it, and
it's very unclear, but intentionally obtuse, right? Like it's supposed to be that way, and I think that's better because honestly, when you get to like use your own imagination, it makes it much more interesting.
Yeah.
If you lay it all out it's kind of boring.
Yeah, I mean, if
So
they were just to be like, and this is why this is happening, then yeah, exactly. It's kind of nice to have some things you can like interpret your own way
yeah,
sometimes.
100%. Yeah.
Hmm.
Panda Express chiming in. The only reason I would back against the Force Ghost idea is because, as far as I know, there has never been a dark side Force Ghost, so Anakin would need to be
That is
pure
true.
light side to be a Force Ghost. Yes, that is technically true.
Yeah,
Uh,
because Sith put their essence into things like Horcruxes. Is how I like to explain it.
yeah,
That's kind of like how
yeah.
they do their version of it, kind of. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but Anakin's also the chosen one, so you have to consider that.
yeah,
You have to consider that, right? So he is special. He also wasn't trained in the art of, you know, maintaining one's consciousness as a part of the Force in the way that
right.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Yoda were able to do. And in my opinion, he kind of already is a bit of a kind of like rule breaker in the sense of like, oh well, we think we understand all these things and the Force works in
Yeah,
these ways. But then Anakin does stuff that's like, oh well, Anakin does it because he's special or whatever.
yeah.
So
But
that's
that's
kind of how,
always
yeah.
been a critique about Anakin having a Force Ghost when they kind of retcon that and put his Force Ghost into what is it, Episode Six? There.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Return of the
Um,
Jedi.
so that's always been people's kind of issue with that. Is like, well, when did he learn how to do that? Blah blah blah. You know. So that's always kind of been, um, yeah, part of the gripes with Anakin being a Force Ghost and why does he look young? And I don't know. But again, that's the whole thing about Vader redeeming himself and coming back around to the light side right before he dies, I guess. So okay, yeah, again, it's open to interpretation. Kind of depends where where you feel he is in that state.
Yeah, I like I said, this is just a working theory. Nothing
Hmm.
has been fully set in stone here.
Yeah.
So you brought up the Return of the Jedi. I wanted to bring up one other thing that I've done since we last recorded that I'm very excited about, which is I ordered a Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary poster. So if you look behind me in the live recording, you can see that I have the 40th anniversary poster for Empire Strikes Back,
Hmm.
and um, I love it. It's like one of my prized possessions. I got it framed and all this stuff. So I'm just going to quickly switch the screen here so I can show off the poster that I just got. Where is it? Full screen? No. Screen share. There we go. So, oh, that's the wrong screen. Here we go. Pop that up on here. So yeah, I've got the variant version, so it's up on screen here. It's not the best version of it. It's hard to see it, but it's got Vader's head ominously in the background. You've got Luke with his black and gray outfit going on, light, bright green saber, and then you have, of course, the Emperor. And then there's a bunch of Endor motifs, and you can see a Super Star Destroyer, the Death Star 2, etc. It's super cool. Here's the thing, though. I've got now 2 of the original trilogy posters, and they're really badass. But I don't have a poster. There does not exist a 40th anniversary poster by the same artist, because it's the same guy, for the first for Star Wars: A New Hope.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know. I have to figure this. I was looking through posters for A New Hope. There's some really cool, because they hadn't really like figured out the whole like design philosophy for what Star Wars posters are going to look like quite
Yeah.
yet for A New Hope. There's some really funky ones out there for release posters and pre-release posters and all these
Yeah.
things from '77. I
Well,
feel
isn't
like I
there
want to
like
go back to that
the regular, like the kind of iconic one? Um,
with Luke holding the saber up and he's got like the six
yeah.
pack.
And he's
Yeah,
in his like shorty robe.
yeah, yes, exactly. I think that is like, yes, that is cool, but it's like also it's like the basic bitch poster. Like that's the poster. I want, and
Okay.
these are both variants on these posters. So I want something that's a little different if I'm going to
Gotcha.
complete the trilogy,
All right.
So anyway, if anyone has suggestions on that, I'm all ears. Okay, let's get into overall thoughts on Ahsoka season 1, episode 6. So this is again obviously part 6. Far, far away. There's a whole reason that it's titled that. It's pretty obvious once after the first scene
Yeah.
why it's titled that. as Star Wars has always been. It's been in a galaxy far, far away, and that's a direct kind of a shout out to that. It's kind of cute. I actually really like it. It doesn't
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
really. It doesn't feel too kind of cringy. It really feels quite natural, and it actually like lines up with everything they're kind of talking about. It all works for me. So I have no problem with that. And obviously they're in a galaxy far, far away from their Star Wars galaxy. So, it's got, although as far as galaxies go, it's relatively close, but it's all relative. Um, here's the log line. The search for Grand Admiral Thrawn reaches beyond the limits of the galaxy, right? So we're, again, far, far away. This is directed by Jennifer Getzinger, written by David Filoni. Jennifer Getzinger has done episodes of Westworld. That's what's most notable to me.
Oh, okay.
And this is her first time doing Star Wars. I think she does a very commendable job here. There's some very cool shots, specifically good use of the volume, in my opinion, as well as a few other kind of notable shout-outs. But I think she does a commendable work here. And then obviously written by Dave Filoni. I feel here's what I think is a kind of a shame. And again, this is no shot at Jennifer, but I feel like obviously Dave Filoni, the creator of this, creator of Ahsoka, all that, should have done last week's episode, no doubt. But I think he should have done this week's episode too. And the reason for that is because it's the introduction of Ezra and Thrawn back into live action and back into the series. And my personal opinion on this is that I feel like they could have been more epic, more memorable, more exciting introductions to these characters.
Yeah.
And they didn't quite hit for me. And I feel like and that's as someone who has already has a history with these characters, right? Having watched Rebels and all that stuff. I worry about the viewers who don't have that connection of Thrawn, appearing, for the first time and not really hitting, right? And same with Ezra, right? Very brief scene. It's very light, which as it should be, but again, just it feels like it's missing some of that the stuff that movies would bring to this type of thing. You know what I mean? It feels like a TV show, and it has the weight of a TV show, and I feel like there's moments that don't. I think last week had moments that felt bigger than that. I think the week before felt even bigger than that, in my opinion. But people are saying this is one of the best episodes of the season so far. I think it's very good. I think it's exciting to have these characters back. I think Thrawn specifically really feels like he fits right back into the swing of things really well.
Oh yeah.
I think that's really, it feels like supernaturally, natural in the sense that he's been there the whole time.
Right.
And part of that is that's the same actor, so it's like really, that really feels like it is a continuation. But again, I feel like those big moments from this episode didn't hit in the way that I wanted, and I worry about the viewers who don't have that history. So that's where I landed. What was your overall impression?
Yeah, I mean, let me collect my thoughts here. I wouldn't say that this was my favorite episode so far. And here's the thing. There were a lot of things that I really liked about it, but there are a few things that I feel like I was just a little like really about. I mean, we'll get to it as we get to it, but I kind of get what you're saying, especially about like the Ezra and Sabine interaction. I found it a little weird. I don't know. And you're right. It just wasn't like climactic enough. I thought the Thrawn one was fine. Like I kind of thought his reintroduction was pretty cool.
That works better. The ship does a lot of the work though.
Yes,
in my opinion.
and like the troopers do a lot of the work, and like it was pretty cool. I didn't mind because that was not something I was expecting was to see all the troopers. I was like, whoa, like that.
Yeah, that is cool. 100%.
I was like, okay, interesting. But so like for me that was like a pretty big moment. But yeah, like the Ezra one like did kind of fall flat for me. And I just didn't think that that's how they would like interact with each other.
Musically, it could have been more. I think more exciting. Like again, there's themes that are reused here from Rebels that I think largely work, but there's opportunity there to kind of do something more exciting, and I think they didn't take it. I think maybe they wanted to feel kind of like spontaneous, but ultimately, you're bringing a character back that's only been mentioned. And this is kind of like, hey, the classic rule about show don't tell, and all we've been doing is telling people about Ezra for 5 episodes now.
Yeah.
And then the first episode, the first time we see him, it's like not even a big deal. And I feel like that is a mistake. I think Ezra has the potential to be a very, integral part of what they're doing with this Mandoverse stuff. And, for lack of a better term. But if you treat him like he's not a big deal, people aren't going to think of him that way. And I think that's a missed opportunity. There's still lots of time for him to be built up as a badass. I don't think he even has a lightsaber right now. Like
Sabine has his lightsaber.
Yeah, so she has to give it back to him.
Right?
Yeah. I guess in theory, or maybe she's going to say no, it's yours now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because actually that was something that Adam brought up when we were watching. I was like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot that he gives it to her before he does his whole thing with Thrawn. Right. He does his whole plan, so she has his lightsaber. But yeah,
I just says it's her lightsaber now because she's made those modifications.
She's made modifications. Yeah, that's kind of the thing, right? Like everybody kind of makes their own lightsaber theirs, but
maybe
Ezra should go back to his gun lightsaber.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, the blaster saber. Yeah. But I think maybe it would make more sense for Sabine
to have one like that.
To have one of those, right?
True.
A part blaster, part lightsaber thing. Although again, even more dangerous. Just when you think a lightsaber couldn't be more dangerous, to its own user, putting a gun on the front so that you have to wave a blade around as you're aiming at stuff seems like an accident waiting to happen. Just saying.
Oh yeah.
Luckily, limbs are easily replaced in this galaxy, so
very easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other overall thoughts on the episode?
I mean, I think we can kind of maybe just get into it. My only other thing was because I said this before that I was going to be bummed if they showed up in a new galaxy and it was just some boring planet. And I think the planet's boring.
It is literally a wasteland. They call it that.
And I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, okay, I'm like, whatever, I'm getting over it. But I was like, man, you're in a whole new galaxy. Make it cool. The whale boneyard, kind of cool.
What do you mean kind of cool? That's super cool.
That's cool. So whatever, I'll give that its justice.
Whatever
and they're alluding that there's something else spooky going on. So we'll see.
That's true.
Next episode, maybe.
It is a witch's homeworld, so there's got to be something else going on.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, so this is just water and rocks, swampy kind of looking. I don't know, marshland. I was bummed. I was like, I wanted a cooler planet.
The Screen Crush recap made some comparisons between this planet and Lord of the Rings. Obviously, there's been some Lord of the Rings comparisons with Ahsoka the White versus Ahsoka the Grey and some of that stuff, and I can certainly see that. I don't know if it's intentional, but the big statues and the big open spaces and the the almost New Zealand-esque topography, I think kind of alludes to that. And obviously, the castle that looks like it's Minas Tirith probably is also a pretty big giveaway, or Minas Morgul, depending on how you want to look at it. But it's more of a Minas Tirith kind of analog, built into the side of a mountain kind of castle thing. Pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know. The whale graveyard just made me think of the Lion King.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Whatever the light touches is all kingdom.
Yeah.
Right? And what's that over there?
What's that shadowy place?
Yeah. That's Transcona. Okay, so let's begin our scene by scene recap. So we start in hyperspace. And we start with this really cool shot, I think, of the Purrgil in hyperspace.
Yeah.
We kind of saw them hinted at in Mando Season 3, kind of what they might look like in hyperspace. But it's slightly different than when a ship is in hyperspace. It's got more, it feels more electric, a little bit more visceral.
Is there more rainbows?
Yeah, there's more rainbows. Yeah, no. I don't think there's any rainbows normally.
Okay, I didn't think so. I just figured because they were going extra fast is kind of, I don't know. It just looks different because it's a different lane and they're going super fast.
Maybe they're traveling on the Bifrost.
Oh, maybe.
Something. I don't know. So that would be another obviously hint to Norse mythology. There's been a few of those already in this season. So I think it just looks really cool. I was skeptical of what they looked like the first time I saw them in real live action. They've really grown on me. I think they looked badass here in the blue hyperspace lane.
Yeah.
And the whale sounds obviously all really add to that whole effect. So we join up with Ahsoka and Hu Yang, who are still passing time on the T6 inside the whale. Just to be clear, they're still inside the whale. And again, unclear if they like. It doesn't seem like it seems like once they're inside, they don't have to do anything to like maintain stability. Like it's like the whale does all that.
Yeah, I said they're parked on his tongue.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still not convinced in that.
I think that, like, what? They're not flying. They're not hovering. Like, they're just parked.
I think they're hovering. I felt like they were hovering. That was what it felt like to me when they entered the mouth area last week. But whatever. So Ahsoka is kind of reminiscing, I guess, about Hu Yang's stories from the temple when she was a youngling, and referencing the history of the galaxy, parts 1, 2, and 3. Again, the Screen Crush recap kind of said, well, maybe that's a reference to the original trilogy, right, of the movies. I like to almost think of it as History of the Galaxy, the sequels, the prequels, and the original trilogy. It's parts 1, 2, and 3, and you could assign numbers based on whichever 1 being the original trilogy, or 1 being the prequels, 2 being the original trilogy or the prequels, 3 being obviously the sequels. But regardless, I don't know. Again, I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but I do think it's a cute kind of callback or kind of moment to think about the Jedi as they once were. I think it's probably more of a connection to Balin's stories about how when he was in the temple and he was learning about Peridia, it was folklore and all that kind of stuff. I think that's probably what it's more directly aligned to.
Yeah.
Anyway, she tells Hu Yang about Sabine's quote-unquote betrayal. She's like, I didn't tell Hera that she went with them willingly, right? And I love Hu Yang's response. Ooh, that's troubling, right?
Yeah.
First he says that's impossible, and then he says it's troubling. And I guess the way to frame this is that Ahsoka's still thinking about the greater good here, right? She cautioned her against her, personal feelings for Ezra being, a weak spot for her, and she let it, despite her teachings, get to her and allowed her to make the wrong decision, right? Ahsoka's saying, well, if she hadn't done that, we wouldn't have to worry about Thrawn, and we wouldn't have to worry about all these war coming back and all these other things. And she even says that she was fated to make that decision, which I think is an interesting definition of fate, in my opinion, because she argues that if she had had more time to train her, then that fate would be different. I don't really see fate that way, right? And obviously we've been playing with this idea of the threads of fate, and it's actually there's a lot more. There's actually other threads of fate references. Obviously, the 3 witches being maybe a potential reference to the 3 fates in Greek mythology, and talking about the loose threads. Obviously, again, those specific Greek myths about the fates spin threads of fate, right? So, that's kind of on the nose. But again, this idea that she could have changed her fate, quote unquote, by having taught her more. And Hu Yang's response is that, like, listen, you might be strong with the Force, but it doesn't give you all the answers. And for her, or for you, this might seem like an obvious choice, right? That you need to weigh this between the fate of the universe and the fate of your friend. And ultimately, you were taught to weigh the needs of the many over the needs of the few.
Right.
Right. But when push comes to shove, Sabine was not prepared to make that decision. Again, you can argue that was Sabine's fault, or that's just who she is. And I love his answer here, which is, for her, it may have been her only choice.
Right.
Which we kind of talked about a little bit of that kind of at the time, which is like, given where, what was in front of her, the choice that she just saw Ahsoka seemingly die, right? Which I still feel like she hasn't really reckoned with, to be honest. And I think that is a critique of the show. It's just kind of like, well, we know she's alive, so we won't really have Ahsoka, feel any negative emotions, but she probably should. And anyway, that this idea that given the position that she was in, she had to choose the fate of Ezra because she'd already lost everything else.
Right. Yeah.
So, Ahsoka in this position says, well, it was a choice she made for herself, right?
Right.
And obviously she knows that selfishness and allowing those things to, the fear of loss and those things control you. She knows where those things lead. And she, and Hu Yang says as much. She said that is what your fear is, right? But
Right.
I guess the kind of counterpoint to that same thing, or not even counterpoint, but the flip side to that note from Hu Yang is that just because you're afraid of that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it was, right?
Of course.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's interesting exchange. It's quite cryptic in my opinion, so you can kind of read it a lot of different ways. But how did you kind of take this exchange?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like again, it's Ahsoka thinking she's failed in a way, like thinking she should have taught Sabine more, and then maybe that would have changed things. But I don't think it would have anyway. And I
Right,
kind of think that's what Hu Yang's trying to tell her, that regardless of how much you teach Sabine and how much she learns from you and accepts from you, right? It's she's still in the end going to have her own feelings towards things. Like it's just
right,
she's
and
still going to have to make her own decisions, and sometimes those decisions may not be the ones that you think they should be.
yeah, I don't. It's complex because she has regrets about taking on Padawans at an
Yeah.
older age, right? I mean, it's funny to think like you know they didn't want to train Anakin because he was too old. He was 10 years old,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
now you have Ahsoka taking on a 30-something-year-old.
Well, I mean, look how that turned out for Anakin though.
Right. I mean, exactly. So she has kind of a direct analog to why that would be
Yeah.
problematic. But like she's a full grown adult with existing attachments, and I think part of this is that it feels a bit regressive from the Ahsoka we
Yeah.
saw at the end of last week. Right. It's like this feels more in line with the Ahsoka that would have had this conversation before she died, quote unquote, died. Right. And that's I feel like a little unfortunate. Because it just muddies the waters a bit. But you would like her to kind of come out of that experience and kind of understand that there is a balance to that, and that this idea that you need to. And she even said as much to Hu Yang before. It's like, oh, this is the Jedi tradition proven over thousands of years, which she says failed. Right?
Mhm.
Can't ignore that. And so she's trying to implore these kind of same Jedi principles of detachment, the greater good, etc., to a scenario where she never grew up in that environment
Yeah.
with Sabine. So I don't know. It's a bit muddy for me, this whole sequence at the beginning. I do think it's quite warm, which is like kind of nice. It kind of
Yeah.
starts off the
Yeah.
episode in a nice way, and then obviously she says, "You know what? Never mind. Do tell me one of those stories
Yeah.
from And then he says, "Okay, well, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away." So I guess how did you react to hearing that?
I love
How
that.
did you interpret it? All that kind of thing.
I liked it. I don't know. It just I don't know. It's very full circle for me. For like, how am I wording this? Sorry, my brain. You have to bear with me here.
Right. New mother brain.
Yeah, it's bad. My lack of sleep is getting to me these days. But yes, I found it very full circle. I like hearing that within Star Wars. We see the crawls, right? Where
Sure.
that happens
This
in the
season
movies.
starts with a
But
crawl, right?
yeah, yeah. So it's to me, it's kind of heartwarming to see that that's how those stories are told to the Jedi in Star Wars too. Like we're being told these stories in, you know, from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's kind of telling us these stories happened a long time ago,
Do
right?
you think
And it's
here's a question, and this is I feel like what they're trying to imply, but maybe it's a little bit of just we want to give you some of the warm feelings of, hey, that's from the crawl, and I think
yeah,
it's more than that.
nostalgia.
I think
Yeah.
there is more than this the nostalgia bait element here. There is some of that in this show, and I think that is a fair critique of it at times. Largely speaking, I think it's handled with more grace. And I think this is handled with grace. But do you think he's literally telling a story about Peridia, right? Because he talks about
Yeah.
how, Balin talks about how, oh yeah, we heard these folklore stories about,
Yeah.
time, and they even mention how her Morgan Elsbeth's ancestors were riding the whales long before time was counted,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So you're saying a long time ago because there's no specific time in a galaxy far, far away because it's literally in another galaxy.
Yeah.
And then he's going to tell the story about the first time the Jedi traveled there or whatever.
Mhm.
I feel like that's what the kind of like in-world explicit definition of what's going
Yeah,
on, and then
yeah.
okay, so you're in agreement with that? Okay,
Yes. No, I think he's exactly. I think he's telling her these stories about Peridia, or these stories that they tell young Jedi as they're growing up. But I just think it's that extra little layer to the fans too, of being like, you get told these stories about
right,
what we're watching right now,
right,
these people from a galaxy far, far away.
right,
But they
yeah,
also get told those stories about different people from a different galaxy
yeah,
far,
that's
far
fun.
away.
I agree. That is, I think
So
that
I
is
just
the,
think it's
I think
quite
that's the
cute.
right, I think that's the right
Yeah.
interpretation. Yeah, agreed. Okay, well, enough with the warm and fuzzies because we're off to Peridia, and we start with we're still on the Eye of Sauron. Sorry, the Eye of Sion, and we are with Sabine. She's still handcuffed. She's in a prison cell, a kind of ornate prison cell. Obviously, the gold theme from the Eye of Sion is very consistent design philosophy
Mhm.
throughout the entire ship. Um, and she wakes up, and again, there's no clear understanding of how long they've been in hyperspace. We don't really know that. It's like maybe a couple days. It's hard. It's really, there's no way to know. So she wakes up in this prison. Balin arrives for a brief chat. I think she says something about Ahsoka here. I think it might be the other prison cell scene that
Yeah.
she's in. But Balin arrives for a brief chat, suggesting that she kind of use her time to reflect, right? Kind of
Right.
as a classic Jedi move. Well, you just meditate, right? And but he does understand why she might not want to, right? Thinking about how to reflect would mean to think about her lost family,
Right.
about how Ezra's gone, about how Ahsoka seemingly just died, all these things, and she chooses to kind of bury her head in the sand intentionally, I guess, to some degree. Um, any other interpretation of that in your opinion?
No, I think it was just that, right? Like it's yeah, I, a lot of times I don't know, I feel like Star Wars tries a little too hard maybe sometimes to have like all these multiple meetings of things, and I feel like sometimes they're just like very surface
Yeah,
level.
I feel like this is just like it's like, oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
talking about her dead family, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, fair enough. Like, what that I think that's fine.
Yeah.
It is a little bit like it is. I'm not saying it's cryptic because I think it's fairly on the nose, but at the same time, it's like I feel like we don't have to beat around the bush in this way, and it's like I don't
Yeah.
know if this scene really like what does this scene add? Because again, as I mentioned before, Ahsoka's not really grieving. Sorry, Sabine's not grieving Ahsoka's death in the way that you think
Right.
that she would or should. Um, we just found out about the whole family situation. This would have been a great opportunity to explore some of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
background for her, but we don't do that. It's just glossed over, I think I suspect it's just there for us to remember that she's on the ship before we get to
I
the next scene.
mean, yeah, and I think a little bit of the, she's like when she's yelling at him, she's like, "You
We had
promised,"
a
or whatever.
deal, right?
We had
We
a
had a
deal, and he kind of
deal,
just like gives her the side eye, like, "Yeah, I'm not
right?
like I don't know, I'm a bad guy."
Yeah, I mean, I
But I
think
don't
that's
know
interesting. Yeah,
that. I think it's a little bit of like maybe him like sideways telling her like, "I don't know, why don't you do your Jedi thing, like meditate?" But she doesn't do that, right? Because she's not a Jedi yet.
right.
So it's like
Yeah,
almost a little slight.
right. It's like if you were more Jedi like, you might be able to figure out your own way out of the situation
Yeah.
through peace and calm, but instead you're pacing and on edge and
Yeah. Exactly.
very Anakin like, to be honest.
Yeah.
But so she reminds him that they have a deal. I always respect a villain who stands by their word. In this case, it's interesting because we have now two villains,
Yeah.
both Balin and Thrawn, who like to hold to their word, right? I think it's easy to have someone make a promise then break it. I think it's more
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
to have someone have a code or whatever. That being said, the choice to break their code or to break a promise to somebody is in and of itself interesting if used in the right way. So,
Right.
I think there's still potential for something like that to still be a part of it. I mean, they basically do that later, but
Yeah. I mean, I've always
um,
liked that kind of about Thrawn too, about how kind of like respects certain aspects of like culture and certain aspects of deals and your word and what you say, and like I've always liked that about his character.
Yeah, but he kind of finds a way to weasel himself out of some of those
Oh
things.
yeah, he
So
absolutely does. But I mean, it's not that he just because he struck a deal with you doesn't mean he also can't strike a deal with somebody else.
sure, right, right.
Yeah,
Like here's the thing, but now you're dead or whatever.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, I didn't say I wasn't gonna kill you. You know,
yeah,
after the deal
exactly.
was over, it's like,
I
oh,
said I'd
good,
let you
got me
go, but not
there.
that I wouldn't hunt you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, tricky, very tricksy. Okay,
Hmm.
Bridge of the Eye of Science. So we go back to the bridge, and Morgan asks about Sabine. Balin believes that she may still be of use to them, that she's blinded by her desire to be reunited with Ezra. And I think that's a very good read of, of Sabine. She is blinded by that. That is what allowed her to be vulnerable enough to give them the map, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
again,
Yeah.
I think they actually, I don't know if they do enough work really hammering this home. But Thrawn mentions later, it's like, I understand. I have you to thank for my
Yeah.
rescue from,
Pretty much.
yeah. So it's like, but we don't really linger on that concept. But I think that's an interesting idea that she traded the galaxy's fate for the desire to see her own friend, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just as, and credit where credit's due. Um, the Screen Crush recap mentions that similar to how Anakin trades the fate of the galaxy for the chance of maybe saving
Yes.
Padme.
Saving Padme. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. It's an easy thing with people to
Yeah, selfish
dangle
ultimately.
something that they
Yeah.
they care about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so this is when we arrive at Peridia. They drop from hyperspace and we get a little bit of like this like electricity bolts because they're going so fast. And we get to see Peridia, which is a planet. It's got a ring around it. A ring, I guess, consisting of the bones of dead Purgle,
Yeah.
seemingly,
That was
which is
pretty cool.
very cool and very eerie, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you think of
Yeah.
this planet as being, okay, it's the former home of an ancient witch society, right? Kingdom of witches, and it's surrounded by death.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to think that we think of places of power. Obviously, one of those places was on Cetos, right? You have places like the Sith temples or the Jedi Temple, or some of these places that are kind of these strong in the Force. You have to imagine that a dead space whale graveyard, right, is
Yeah.
strong in the Force in some way or another, right?
Yeah, I wonder. It is cool too, like because obviously we've seen so many things like this that are like, oh, it's an asteroid belt that you have to navigate through. But yeah, navigating through a space whale graveyard is like quite eerie. And yeah, I'm curious if you're right, if there's any like not spookiness, you know what I mean, but like extra force stuff going on in there
Yeah,
too.
right.
Yeah.
Think of like where where Vader and Ahsoka square off in Rebels, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But again, they allude that there's something creepier about this planet. We
There's
don't know what it is
something
yet. So,
more.
and that the whales literally go there to die. So I'm like, oh, I wonder, like, why there? Why do they choose this? Like,
Yeah, but I mean, why do elephants choose where they go to die, right?
is
I
that a
mean, I
real
don't know.
thing?
Yes, elephants do have a communal death
Ooh,
location. Yeah,
creepy.
elephants are really cool. I don't know, like, if
I
we can
like
express that enough. The
the
biggest animals are
stories.
always the coolest.
I like the stories where they take revenge on people.
Well,
And
yeah, those
like
are.
hunt the people down and kill them. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what you got because you tried to poach them and they're elephant family. And then they're
And
like,
they never forget.
yeah, they're like that human. Gonna get
Right.
them.
Exactly.
I
But
like
then
it.
I also love the stories about how they have like strong bonds with people
Yes,
because they're
yes,
so
that too.
emotionally intelligent. Just like whales,
Yeah.
by the way, right? Obviously, the elephants being the whales of the sea, right?
You mean whales
Or
are
the
the
whales.
elephants of the
Well,
sea?
yeah, that's what I meant.
There you go.
Same. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, they confirm that this is Peridia, so we know that the planet is name is Peridia. We don't necessarily know if the whole galaxy's name is that. Um, it is the ancient homeworld of the Dathomiri, so we learned that right off the bat. But so when you heard that, what did you think? Like, is that like you're like,
Oh,
oh, sure, or like what was your opinion?
No, I thought that was cool. I didn't realize that, they had a different homeworld planet,
Yeah,
like other than Dathomir. So I'm like, that's pretty neat. It is funny, like just as an aside, my brother-in-law, so we went and saw like the last Star Wars movie, like kind of as a family. So
episode
obviously,
9.
yeah, like me and Adam, and then like Mike
That
and
garbage
his,
pile. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
Mike and his girlfriend. And I guess I didn't remember this, but he said as we were leaving, she was saying something about how she wanted to see like more about like because she had I think they had just finished watching Clone Wars or something, but
Sure.
she was talking about like the Night Sisters. She's like, oh, I want to see like a movie that has about the Night Sisters, and we were all like, ah, yeah, sorry, they're all dead. So
Yeah, about that.
when she saw
Yeah.
them in this, she was just like, hey, f you guys, like you told me they were all dead, and now they're back, and I'm like, yep, no, you're right.
Yeah, because death and resurrection are deceptions played by both
Yeah.
Night Sisters and the Jedi.
Well, yeah, and it's just quite cool that they're not dead because they are a very, very cool race. Like they're just really
I'm
neat.
surprised by how well they hold up in live action in like their full
They
glory,
they look
right?
great. Like I don't know, I'm a big fan of them.
Yeah, they really look like witches. I think that's like
Yeah,
the strongest like compliment I can give them.
I I love the way that what's her name? Uh,
Oh, Shin is like
Shin,
more
witch
witches,
witches. Like the
more
way she
witches.
says witches, because she said it's like a few times now in the show, like
Yeah.
witches, more witches, and I'm like, I just like the way she says witches.
She also says
Like,
wasteland really weird later in the episode. She's like wasteland. And I was like, this
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
Iceland. This isn't Iceland. This
But
is you know what I mean. I thought that was funny,
But yeah, it's like she's just like super perturbed about witches, and I want to know what her beef is with them. But
I I guess they've been working with them for a while, and they're like hard to
yeah,
trust. Probably is
yeah.
the yeah.
I mean, they're yeah. From what I know, yeah, it's just cool. I'm like pumped about it. It's the Night Sisters are a very very cool race. The Dathomiri are a very cool race. Obviously, that's where we get Darth Maul from too. So
Well, is he Dathomiri? Is that his?
yeah, they're the same because
They're the
um
male versions.
the night yeah, so the Night Sisters and the whatever Dathomiri males. Night Sisters are a matriarchal
Yeah, but
society.
Maul's a Zabrak. Are these Zabraks that
They're the
were
same. That's they only use the males for breeding.
okay?
And the women, like the Night Sister women or the witches, and they kind of run Dathomir. And the men, I think they live on a moon or on like a different part of Dathomir,
Well,
and
I'm
they only use the
okay.
men for
I don't know if that's
breeding.
true because
It's true.
Zabrak females look like Zabrak males. They have spiky horn heads. Um, they don't look like the Night Sisters. They are different,
I
right?
know, but
So, I think
I'm right
I
about
think that
this.
the
They're
the
the same.
Dathomiri are they did use the Zabrak species, which probably were Dathomir was probably the original homeworld, but they
Maybe.
probably did use those males for their own purposes, but they are not themselves Zabrak. I think that's the
Maybe.
distinction.
All
I'm
right.
just looking at
Maybe
I
then.
googled Zabrak female, and all the images here are, um, one is from, by the way, from the Clone Wars video game. One is
Right.
from sorry, not the Clone Wars video game, from the Battlefront video games. One is from Suji from Star Wars, the Clone Wars, the
Yeah.
character from that show, as well as obviously a bunch of images of that what's her name from the original potential one of the villains from what was supposed to be Episode 7 is kind of like a female version of Darth Maul, like Darth Talon, I think her name was.
Oh, yeah, but she's
Right,
a Twi'lek.
but yeah, you know what? You're right. That's a different thing. But
Yeah.
they've really jumped off of that concept for some of these maybe not so safe for work images here that I'm seeing.
No, Darth Talon's she's just a red Twi'lek.
Right, she's just a red Twi'lek. That's right, but also
Yeah.
doesn't exist because she was never really made. So
Yeah, I
technically,
don't know, but they call him it when I'm looking on Wikipedia here, it says Maul was a force sensitive Dathomirian Zabrak. So it's like still Dathomirian. I guess Dathomirian. I don't know.
I guess again, this is a we don't know the answer to this. Maybe it has yet to be defined. Or this would be a great question for like Dave Filoni or others in this or other people that did
I
this
was
film.
almost positive that the Night Sisters are a matriarchal society. And
They
it's
are,
like
but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the same species.
that's true, I guess.
I think that's the distinction, right? It's like a legume bean situation, is what I'm saying.
A what?
like all beans are legumes, but all legumes are beans. You know?
Okay. I was like, I did not. I thought you said lagoon. Like a.
Oh yeah, no, that's
Yeah. I
different.
was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so we learned that this is the ancient homeworld of the Dathmiri. They rode the space whales before time was counted, as we mentioned before. What do you think they mean by rode? Do you think they literally like put a spacesuit on, or like had like a little lasso and like
I don't
rode
know.
them
Maybe wrote
around,
in their
or
mouth.
maybe they rode in their mouths? That's probably more likely. But it just seems
Yeah,
like
I guess.
it seems like to me. I mean, maybe the ancient Dathmiri were more light side users than dark side users,
Could
because I
be.
feel like the Purgle wouldn't react well to dark side users. But that's pure speculation.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to know.
Sorry, I did more Googling and you are correct. Most Night Sisters were full blooded humans, but some of their covens consisted entirely of Dathomirians, the result of hybridization between human witches and male Zabrak.
Oh, weird. Okay, that's so messed up.
Yeah.
Okay, archive. Then Balin chimes in here, saying that the Jedi Archive spoke of the end of the migration route of the Star Whales. This is where they come to die, a graveyard. And then I was like, wow, that's a cool idea. So by this point in the episode, I'm very much in. I was like, this is super cool. They receive a signal from the surface. They don't mess. They're not wasting any time, and they're like, okay, let's go check it out, right? So the ring, the hyperspace ring, stays in orbit, and then they take their shuttle down. By the way, their shuttle detaches from the eye. It looks like, if it's not detached, like this ornamental piece.
Yeah,
but then it
cool.
comes off. What is how cool? I just like we might have seen that before, but I thought that was.
I don't know. I mean, cool. I thought this shuttle is super cool. We don't get enough gold ships in Star Wars. Like they're always gray or black, or it's like I just like this like shiny, cool,
more ostentatious. I think that's what we need.
Yeah, I mean it was quite fancy looking, but this is one that if they come out with a whatchamacallit, like a toy of it, I'd buy it.
I feel like a good Lego set, but like it's hard to make gold Lego, I guess, look good. So I don't know.
Yeah. I was like, man, this is like, it's just a really cool looking little shuttle.
You know who loved gold?
C-3PO.
Well, yeah, also gold member, but no, Snoke. He was a big fan of gold. He used gold in his robes.
Oh, okay then.
I love gold. The shuttle. I'm from Holland, isn't that weird? Anyway, the shuttle detaches from the eye. They head down to the surface. As they head down to the surface, we see more of the planet. So they emerge from clouds, and we see what looks to be like a statue very high up in the air. And it's like, that's, first of all, in and of itself, very cool. Striking.
Always
visuals.
Cool. Yeah. Always cool when you see a really massive humanoid or 100%. Whatever statue. Yeah.
Right. Like imagine like that the statue of Christ in Rio de Janeiro, but like 100 times that size.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? What is this? A statue for ants?
Well, they're like those like the sphinxes in Egypt. Like they're huge.
Yeah, but bigger than that, I think. Even I would say it's like it would
they're
be
like
a statue the size of like the statue the size of like a skyscraper. Yeah, pretty cool. So we also see a castle on the side of the mountain, which again feels a lot like that, analog to Lord of the Rings, Minas Tirith, which is obviously like all white and good, but this is like black, so it's kind of like a cool like visual distinction. We see more of these large statues kind of like dotting the surface, which also adds a lot of air of mystery. Really, and we get a shot of Morgan, like her face, and she looks like she's really excited to be here, which is very fun.
Yeah.
So they land on top of the castle, and I did think, here's the thing, it's like, okay, we're in a new galaxy. How does this all work? No, they still have a nice landing platform for starships. So that's a thing that they have.
I mean, it's not like there wouldn't be starships in that other galaxy.
Why would we believe that there would be?
Why wouldn't
we have no reason to believe that there's anything in that galaxy.
It's a whole galaxy.
We don't have starships. If they came to our galaxy, there wouldn't be parking lots for starships anywhere.
There's helicopter pads, so.
Yeah, I guess, but like most starships are bigger than most helicopters.
I know, but I don't know. Not that little shuttle they came down in, though. That thing's small.
Maybe. Anyway, they have a nice parking pad for it. And I just thought, it does look cool. I like the matte gray black that they've got there, but I don't know. I just kind of would have liked something more different,
I get what you're saying. It's like how I feel
Anyways,
about the planet itself. Like I just
yeah,
wanted it to be
exactly.
cooler.
This is just like oh, they can still breathe. It's not a problem. It's just a rocky planet. Cool.
Yeah,
At least it's not a desert planet. I think we can all
that's
agree
true.
on
It's true. We did
that.
say we were going to be pissed if it was just a desert planet. This
Imagine.
isn't much better,
I mean,
but
I guess like I could imagine those statues being on like it would be very like a direct Egyptian kind of like analog, which I don't think we had
yeah,
a lot of in Star Wars, so that could have been cool. But
yeah,
no, this is better. Um, okay, so they land on the top of the castle and they meet with three Dathomiri witches. Obviously, witches almost always come in threes, all the way back to Macbeth. And we find out that these are the Great Mothers, like the original. I mean, I don't know if
yeah,
they're the original, but they're like the head honchos
yeah.
of the
They used to
Dathomiri.
call Mother Talzin the Great Mother too. I think
Oh,
it's just kind
interesting.
of a title. You know what
Okay,
I mean?
right,
Yeah.
right, right. So
But
are
yeah,
they?
you're right. With the three of them, I did get those vibes. Like you see it in like Hercules too, with the
Hmm.
three witches that share the eyeball, and yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I was like, ooh,
Exactly. Um, so they're like, I don't know, meditating or casting a spell or whatever they're doing, with three floating balls connected to, like by a wire of energy. Which I don't know what the deal with that whole situation is, but it does make me think that obviously this location is still, you can still use the Force here because one of the theories going around was that if you leave the Star Wars galaxy, that the Force is you kind of lose the ability to use the Force. Like it only works within the
oh,
galaxy.
okay.
That's a theory that's been and that for instance like some um, species from other galaxies are resistant to the Force because
Ah,
they come
okay.
from a galaxy that doesn't have it or whatever.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So
Okay.
in this case, that theory is thrown out the window because obviously they can still use the Force here. What do you think those balls are? Like, what do you think they're doing with those?
I have no clue because like they I was wondering the same thing like on my second watch. I'm like, what are they doing with those? Because then eventually they use them to kind of restrain Sabine. So I'm like, I don't know.
Maybe they're
I'm
like
like,
they're a magic ball,
they also kind of looked like though they look similar to the sphere that they had to
the
get
map,
there. Yeah,
right?
the
The
map.
map, yeah.
So
So they greet Morgan as a child of Dathomir, and they say you do our ancestors credit. So I guess it's like, hey, not many of you guys make it out this far.
right.
Kudos.
Yeah.
They called to her in her dreams. So this is interesting. I feel like there's a bit of a web here. So that these great mothers have a deal with Thrawn,
Yes.
right? But there's also this kind of piece of destiny to it, right? That like, oh no, the threads of fate tell us that we need to work with you so that we can accomplish something. We don't know what the answer to that is
Yes.
yet.
Yeah.
Um, and that to do that, we need to send a message across the stars to another galaxy, back to the Star Wars galaxy, and commune with Morgan Elsbeth, through the Force or through her dreams or
Right.
something like that. But I'm having a hard time connecting the whole fates thing with Thrawn. Um, it loses me with the Thrawn element because at the very end of the episode they say that they need to help him because I don't find the exact line. The thread of destiny demands it, Grand Admiral. What the
Okay.
hell do they mean by that? I have no. I don't. I
Okay. Well, I mean, we can get to it later too, but I think they need him because they want off that planet for whatever
right.
reason. And
It's
I
a
think they
dead
need
planet.
him and his starship to get the stuff out of their catacombs, which I'm assuming are
More
um
dead.
more dead Night
What?
Sisters that they're going to
Right.
revive because they can kind of do that.
Right.
Um, that's kind of what I'm thinking is like that's what they need to get their coven back and to
Sure.
its former glory is to get off this planet. They
So
need
do you
Thrawn
think
and
they're
his ship.
using Thrawn?
I think
Or
so.
they think that they're using Thrawn.
I think
Thrawn
so.
probably feels like he's using them.
Yes, that's kind
Um.
of what the vibe I'm getting from it is
Mhm.
that they're like, okay, well, we'll call this girl Morgan Elsbeth back here to get you and pick you up,
Right.
but we're gonna
In
hitch a ride.
exchange, right? We
Yeah,
want you to take me and all this stuff from our
exactly.
catacombs.
So they're like, we'll use our magic to let her know where we are.
And like they can
But
see the future, they have some ability of foresight of some kind. But
yeah,
it feels like they're also maybe pumping Thrawn's tires a bit Like
Yeah.
the way he speaks about his return to the galaxy is kind of this like inevitable defeat of the New Republic and all this stuff.
Right.
Feels a bit like self-inflated ego talking, a little bit of narcissistic personality disorder, a little bit is what I'm saying. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that. I just think it's
Yeah.
interesting that we're kind of already picking up on that at this stage. So they know Thrawn, he's on his way. They remark that Sabine, quote unquote, reeks of Jedi. So obviously they have a connection, they have a history with the Jedi. Interesting how long ago that would have been that they would feel that, right? Are we talking hundreds of years, thousands of years? How long have these people been here, right? I don't know. Open question, but interesting, I think.
Yeah.
They also call her an it. It reeks of Jedi. Which is
I know.
fun.
I kind of
Yeah.
like that. It's always like just an extra little slight when, that happens when a character or a person gets called an it. It's,
Get her pronouns right. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's just like that extra, like they don't even see her as like a person. It's an it. Yeah.
So they use their magic balls. Let's call them their
orbs.
Orbs or like your mist. What's that like? When someone looks at like a witch looks into like a mystic ball. What's that usually called?
A crystal ball.
Crystal ball. Let's call them their crystal balls. Anyway, so they use those to tie her up and take her to a holding cell. They say that she's gonna have to wait in solitude, which is kind of a cool line.
Yeah.
So she's back to another cell.
Kind of bugged me. Not the whole scene, just when it's dragging her away and it seems like she's yelling at Balin about Ezra,
right.
but it's like he doesn't know where he is. Like, why are you yelling at Balin? She's like, you told me you'd take me to Ezra. Like, where is he? It's like he doesn't know. He just got there too.
Yeah, I guess, but it's also like they're taking me away. You promised me this, and like
it's true.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume that Ezra's probably not in the cell that I'm being taken to.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. I did like the look Sabine gives when they say this one reeks of Jedi, and she's like, me? Like, me? Not them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because like, why would she stink like Jedi, but the other two wouldn't?
I don't know, but it's probably a good sign for her future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they do give him a funny look later when that's revealed, right?
Yeah.
Like they give him the stink eye. So where were we? So when she's taken away, Balin and Shin have a moment to like chat amongst themselves, and their conversations are always interesting. So they're waiting for Thrawn's arrival, and they have a short discussion. He says that it's a land of dreams and children's stories come to life, which is a kind of a cool idea. That'd be like going to Neverland, basically.
Yeah.
Right? For the first time, be like, this is wild. It's like seeing glass shatter for no reason at all. It's like, it just blows your mind. You're like, I've just seen, I can't believe I'm here right now. Anyway, he remarks that he learned of this place at the temple as folk tales, right? And that all he ever knew of it was that it was this kind of like, partially real, maybe partially fake. It's hard to say because it's kind of lost to time, right? And Shin says, sometimes stories are just stories because she's still young and everything's literal to her. But Balin reminds her that he watched the Jedi Temple burn when he was a young man, and that he couldn't make sense of that experience at the time. But in context, looking back in time, he sees that there's a kind of a pattern to history. So that, when you're looking at the patterns of history, often those are told as stories throughout history. That they're more than stories. They're a roadmap of history. They're a glimpse into a previous time, right?
Right.
So he says he looks at history as inevitable, a cycle of rise and fall, right? Basically a rise and fall of the Empire and Republic. This feels to me a little bit confused, like the message is a little muddled here because they're talking about stories, they're talking about Peridia, and then he starts talking about how the Jedi Temple fell.
Yeah.
And he didn't understand it, but he understands that there's a rise and fall, there's a cycle to things.
Right.
Those feel different, they're related but different mostly, and it feels like they really wanted to get in this line about cycles of rising and falling because they really wanted to touch on the idea of the New Republic and the First Order.
And the First Order, yeah.
Which I think in retrospect, we all agree that the First Order is kind of silly. It's like, okay, it's just the Empire 2.0,
Yeah.
and that feels not that cool, despite their
Well,
cool uniforms and armor and stuff. But like,
exactly. And I don't know, like this is the one thing that's bugging me a little bit about this whole story in general is like I want it to be more than just a way to circle back, kind of how Balin's
back to
talking about it.
Episode 7, right?
Like back to, well, then the Thrawn comes and then he
Is that
helps
even
the First Order.
possible?
Like that's fucking boring. And
Is that possible though? Are given the time frame we're in, right? I mean, you could argue that you could have said this. Someone who's watching Clone Wars for the first time could argue
right.
that they wanted those stories to be more meaningful than just a precursor to Anakin turning bad and
Yeah,
Jedi
I
being
guess,
murdered
but
by
they were more
clones.
meaningful.
Right,
To
but
me,
they are
anyway,
they are in retrospect, but
Yeah.
ultimately those things, a lot of those things are meaningless,
Yeah,
right?
no,
A
it's
lot
true.
of the work that the clones did, all that stuff, basically is all undone right in one
yeah,
moment.
that's
So,
true.
you could argue that you kind of have to just. It's not so much about the destination that it's about the journey.
Yeah,
We're in a kind of this new period between movies where you can kind of tell these self-contained stories. In this case, it's happening in another galaxy, right? So,
yeah,
you could, I suppose, make that argument. I'm that's me kind of like trying to coach myself into a place where I'm not like miserable about this, because it is frustrating and you're like, what the hell? Only 1.5 of those sequel movies are good.
right.
And so much time was spent trying to explain one line of dialogue. Somehow Palpatine returns.
Right,
Which
yeah.
is a hilarious joke that they have on that screen crush. Like, it's so good. Every time they bring it up, I think it's funny.
Yeah.
But like, we're spending all this time doing that, and it just feels like spinning tires, because ultimately that's what happens there. Isn't that interesting? So unless they can make that stuff more interesting by what's happening now, which is possible,
and like there might be
obviously,
another story coming, you know what I mean, like not related to the First Order. This is just, maybe it is going somewhere else and it's just kind of alluding, it's like a red herring. It's like, oh, we think they're just going to bring Thrawn back to like help whatever start up the First Order, to help
sure.
the downfall of the New Republic, but maybe is going to be something else that happens instead. I'm just curious, like what is Balin's personal motivations right now? Like, what does he want? Because I still find it convoluted on what he
Like, he says he wants to find the beginning. What don't you understand about that?
The beginning of what? Like, what does that mean for him?
I think he wants to find a gate to the world between worlds. I think that's what it ultimately comes down to.
Okay. Because I'm just like, I'm just very curious about like his character's motivation and like what does he want?
I also think there's a potential for him to turn to the light side here.
I think so too. Like, I think he's they keep saying like they're mercenaries. Like, to me, that doesn't mean you have a side. And he has this little like, not twinkle in his eye, but when
he
Shin's
shares
asking
a nostalgia for the prequels, just like us.
And when like Shin asks him like, well, I thought you were gonna keep your word to her or whatever. Like, she says something about that about Sabine, and and he basically says like that he's going to, right? I don't know.
Thrawn says that he's going to, which is like, I think I think that's interesting. I think he says how it would be a shame to kill Ahsoka. There's so few Jedi left, all that kind of stuff. But he also talks about how he feels like the Jedi were weak. And again, everything he says about the Jedi later in this episode is entirely accurate. Like, literally nothing is wrong. No notes. But
no notes.
I guess like it is still up in the air. I think that's part of what makes this series work still, is that Balin's so interesting. His line reads are so spot on. He's just so intriguing as a character, and we don't really understand his motivation. We don't really. He wants power, but he even doesn't like when Shin is later is like, is this our turn to be brought into power?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's kind of like, not like, it's a yes and no, right? So there is more to it. It does make me worry about the fate of the character at the end of this season, because
I know,
obviously we know that Ray Stevenson is passed away. R.I.P. And I not to root for the death of a character. I'm not, but I also do hope for a tidy, clean end to it, so that there isn't open questions about what you do with that character. Do you recast him? I feel like it'd be hard to do that.
Yeah, I hope they don't recast.
I mean, I'm open to recasting. I've always said that. like I said, let's bring back young Han. Let's cast new actors to play Luke and Leia, and like we can do that. That's not. I feel like that's not against the rules.
Right.
And so we could do the same thing here. They certainly. I feel like they've done it. That they've recast characters in the past.
They need to. And not that they recast this or anything, but they just need to like Kanan Jarrus him so that he has to wear a mask, so that they can get
maybe.
a new actor.
Sure, maybe. Yeah. Maybe we'll still get Freddie Prinze Jr. in the show.
Yeah.
So who knows? Anyway, interesting. Lots of interesting kind of elements there. So as I mentioned, Shin hopes that their alliance with Thrawn will give them a chance to be, at the top, brought into power. Balin, though, wants to break the cycle. He searches for the beginning, which is, he says, on Peridia, if the old stories are true, right? So maybe a connection to the beginning of time, right, or something like that will give him the ability to, as they say, control time and space.
Right.
It's very confusing at this point. It's not unclear anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we get to Thrawn's big arrival. This is fun.
Ooh, yeah. This was my favorite part of the episode, I think.
Oh, yeah, me too. It's really cool. So as Sabine tries to use the Force to open her new cell, we hear a loud whining sound. I really think the sound design in this episode is really spot on. Kevin Kiner just killing it here. Bringing back, by the way, Thrawn's theme, which I'm a big fan of.
It's good.
Organs.
Yeah.
Right? And
it's very ominous. Yeah. I like the organs and
synthy and organs. It's cool. Yeah.
It was nice because I actually got to hear it. Usually the first time that I watch the episode, like my baby's in the room, so we have to watch it like pretty quiet, so I don't get to hear necessarily like the music cues the way that you would like to hear them. So but usually on my second rewatch, I get to have it louder. So it was nice to be able to hear that like rumbling of the ship and
it's cool.
It's very, very good.
So we see the Star Destroyer arriving. It's an ISD-1, which there has been consternation in the fandom before about Lucasfilm's kind of maybe not refusal, but inability to choose when to use the right design. Right, so there's ISD-1 and there's an ISD-2, and they have different designs. And largely speaking, it's mostly right, but they sometimes get those mixed up when they should be a 1, it's a 2, etc.
Oh, okay.
They have a better ISD-2 model, is my understanding, so they often use ISD-2s in place of ISD-1s. But in this case, people much smarter than I have given their blessing and said that this is an accurate representation of an ISD-1, especially considering all the damage it took from the Purgle and all that kind of stuff, which is really, really cool.
I thought that it was really cool that the damage was still there, because I was obviously looking for that to be like, okay, well, did they fix this ship? And not really. Like, obviously, it still flies, but yeah, it's cool seeing the damage, because this ship is it's called the Chimera.
The Chimera. Yes.
I can never say that word properly, but yes, that is the name of Thrawn's ship, is the Chimera, which is I always thought was cool.
Yeah,
too.
it's
and it has
cool.
a really cool. You can see the remnants of like the old paint job he had underneath it too.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. The coolest thing about it is that he has the ship painted. It reminds me of that pirate ship that was painted that had like a paint job from Mando season 3. By the way, a chimera is a fire-breathing she-monster in Greek mythology, having a lion's head, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. So I think in this case, what? Go ahead.
There's another thing called like chimeraism, right? Where you like it has to do with genes, and where they can mirror like another, not like another person's genes, but a lot of times with like twins, and like it's like a double. You know what I mean? I can't.
What is that? What is gene chimera? Chimera in genetics, an organism or tissue that contains at least 2 different sets of DNA.
Yes, there we go.
Most often originating from the fusion of as many different zygotes, which is fertilized eggs.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, you can have like 2 different kinds. I don't know. They use it sometimes in like stupid shows when they're like, "There's 2 different kinds of DNA in this," and it's like one person's DNA. Yeah.
Right.
But yes, it's just a cool thing.
Well, it's a cool name. It comes from mythology, which they're doing a lot in this series, and it looks really cool with the paint job underneath.
Yeah.
And again, obviously having the battle damage and all that stuff really gives it a sense of like mystery and menace.
Well, it still
So
also gives me, because it's I don't know if they mean to or not, because there's like the whale graveyard, and it's like a kind of a spooky, not like a skeleton ship, but like all the
it kind of
troopers are
is.
beat up on it, and like the ship's beat up, and it's like, you know what I mean? I don't know if they did, if that's on purpose or not, but yeah.
I think it is. I don't think that's a mistake or
Yeah.
coincidence. So I always say I talk about this all the time. This might not have been filmed on location,
Right.
and that's fine because whatever. But love seeing ships in low orbit, like in
Yeah.
atmosphere and stuff. I
They
think it always looks cool.
it just gives you, because you don't really realize how big
Sense of
those ships
scale.
are sometimes. Yeah. I like the way they park it too, like right on top of the
Oh yeah, that's the cool. I've never even considered. Like I
Yeah.
think of Rogue One, and you have that ISD one over top of Jeddah, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like how ominous and cool looking.
Mhm.
And in this case, they're like, well, let's take that to the next level. What if we had a mountain high enough that we could, with a tower on top, that we could park the ship in like
Yeah.
in front
like
of the like
perch
on
it,
the
basically.
the shuttle bay, right?
Yeah.
And you could just like walk out.
Yeah.
That's like the cool.
So
Like that
cool.
is so cool to me.
Yeah. I just love the
So
way it looked. Yeah, it was really, really neat. It was just such a cool shot too, like seeing it coming over, like over top.
yeah, 100%. This is one of those moments where like that's a really cool directorial decision on how
Yeah,
to kind of
yeah.
shoot this and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it lowers over the castle to line with the shuttle bay underneath. The ship is in a state of disarray. As we see the interior, we see a legion of disheveled stormtroopers and their leader Enoch chanting Thrawn as the Blue Man himself makes his way through his soldiers to meet with Morgan and her cavalcade. Obviously, important to note the coloring of Enoch in a lot of gold, which is really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
He looks so badass. Like that
Yeah.
was probably one of the coolest designed characters in Star Wars I've seen in a long time.
Really neat.
Yeah.
And I was just, I don't know why, but I was fully not expecting, like I said earlier, to see all the stormtroopers. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess he would have had a full like company of troopers on board.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. Did you watch the episode at all with subtitles on?
I did. Yes.
Okay. Did you notice that they called them night troopers?
Yeah, which is really cool. Also.
Yeah, I was
right?
like, what's that about? That's interesting. I don't know if that
I
has anything to
love-
do with night sisters and night troopers, or like I
think
don't know.
it yeah, I think it does. My guess is that the theory, the working theory right now is that because they have all these like wrappings around them,
Yeah,
is that they've been either augmented or are dead and have brought
Are
back
dead.
to life.
that's what we
by
were
the-
wondering too.
Yeah.
But Thrawn did say that their numbers had dwindled, so obviously some have died, and not
Maybe
been
some have
brought
died
back.
in a way
Yeah.
that weren't possible to be
True.
brought back.
But yeah, I really liked like the wrappings, like the red wrappings on their like legs and arms and stuff and bodies, and I don't know, they just look so cool.
I mean,
I'm excited for the figures to come out because I would want some of those.
yeah,
in Black
Enoch
Series.
Enoch is so cool. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
it's like his helmet is the same helmet. Again, thinking of Rogue One. Remember the tank drivers? They had those like long, skinny, like cheekbone elements to their helmets. This looks like more than just a regular stormtrooper helmet modified. It looks
Right.
like a special stormtrooper helmet modified with this like
Yeah,
what
gold
people are this gold face,
face,
which
yeah.
people are saying is like an allusion to ancient burial masks.
I was gonna
which
say,
is
like,
also really cool.
kind of, yeah, like Egypt. Like it's just, I don't know. A lot of this is getting like it felt very Egyptian. I don't know. I guess maybe just because of the gold and
The gold helps. Yeah.
yeah, the gold helps, like kind of mummies and tombs and catacombs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
just,
it's really 100%. I think that's a fair analogy. So we find out that in a moment that Enoch is his captain, and kind of like a dark analogy to Captain Rex, kind of in a way.
Yeah.
And then we get Thrawn's first live action like lines in his introduction. Again, we hear his theme here, and he says, "quote What was first but a dream has become a frightening reality for those who might oppose us." Which, to be honest, it's very poetic and sounds really cool, but it's kind of like doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how long do you think he like practiced that line in the mirror? He's like, okay, finally, when they arrive here, I want to see something really cool so that they, recognize how cool I am. So, what he's saying here is, people probably doubted that we would ever find our way back. But now that we are going to make our way back, it's going to be quite terrifying for them. That's kind of what he's saying. But again, it's like it seems like needlessly poetic. But
he always
Star
talks
Wars,
like that, though.
That's
kind of like Thrawn's thing. I don't know. I just feel like he likes to be fancy.
He's kind of like an aristocrat. He kind of has talks in a way that normal people wouldn't speak, right?
Yeah,
definitely. Especially in stark contrast to Sabine. It's just like, tell me where Ezra is, So he thanks the Great Mothers and acknowledges Morgan Elsbeth's success in bringing their plan to fruition, right? Like, hey, he made a deal with the Night Sisters, as we talked about, to reach out to her, and she followed through. And she, being Morgan Elsbeth, seems like she's still very loyal to Thrawn, which is interesting.
Yes.
We don't know any of the history there. It'd be interesting to know what she owes him or why she has this loyalty to him.
Yeah, like why she's so obsessed with him. I also want to know.
Yeah, why are you so obsessed with me right now? And and also, especially with the whole Night Sister connection to this is the original homeworld and those are the Great Mothers and all that kind of stuff. You feel like her loyalty would be almost more to them.
Yeah,
than to Thrawn, but it's not, which is why it's interesting. I think that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
So. So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, she's definitely being just used. I think, I
think so. I think she's kind of a pawn. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, they mentioned that that an agreement with the Great Mothers to take on cargo for them. And we said, presumably to carry that back to the Star Wars galaxy. Our suspicion is that they're dead bodies. They certainly look like caskets. When they're being carried aboard. So
yeah. Well, yeah,
Morgan's,
especially when they talk about catacombs. It's
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Morgan says that she's seen the catacombs and that it'll take at least. When did she see them? Who knows? But she says she saw the catacombs and that it'll take at least 3 days / rotations to complete the cargo transfer, hinting that we might hinting at what this agreement might actually be, which is again dead people.
Yeah, which is interesting. How many dead bodies are you putting that's going to take you 3 days to I don't know. Have you ever been to, I don't know if have you been to France or Paris at all?
I have been to Paris, but I never saw the catacombs.
You didn't see that, Kate, because they're very creepy but very cool. I don't know, every time I think about catacombs, that's all I think about seeing, and it's just wild to me that those actually exist.
Yeah, or the Roman catacombs and stuff, I think.
Yes, yeah.
So I really like, I mean, we don't get a lot from, this is what I mean by Thrawn's kind of introduction being, he gets this cool line right at the beginning, and then the next thing we hear is when she's talking about logistics. She's like, oh, it's going to take 3 days to get the stuff done. He's like, an acceptable time frame, which is very Thrawn.
It is Thrawn.
I like that, but it's what a deflation of of how excited. It's okay, we're just going to get into logistics right away. It just doesn't, feels
really?
anticlimactic.
See, that didn't bug me. To me, that was just, I don't know. It was almost kind of funny. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a totally Thrawn thing to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because a classic Imperial thing, this is always how you compare and contrast. A classic Imperial would say, make it happen in 2, or we need to be out of here in 12 hours, or whatever it is. And then because they were rushing, they made a mistake, whereas, he always would take his time.
Yes.
So the witches mention that Sabine was brought unexpectedly. They're like, by the way, should mention these motherfuckers brought
this tattle.
An unexpected guest.
Yeah, right? They have a prisoner.
Yeah. They call it a loose thread. Again, that comparison to the kind of threads of fate, which is interesting. They didn't see it because it was... I guess that's another interesting piece. They didn't see that she was going to be there. And I think that in and of itself is an interesting kind of thread to pull on, a story thread to pull on.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know what that necessarily means. Why would she be a blind spot, etc. What does a loose thread mean? I don't know if they'll explore that more, but I like the concept of it.
I'm curious if it's because she's not as connected to the Force, maybe, so they have a harder time seeing her. You know what I mean?
But they also said that she smells like Jedi, so
yeah, that's true. She's closer though.
Yeah. Maybe because she's been spending so much time with Ahsoka that she literally smells like Ahsoka.
Yeah, exactly.
Baylan is introduced to Thrawn at this time as mercenaries. I think that's also, you brought that up earlier. I think it's an important distinction. And as being the ones who wasn't me, it was this guy who brought him on, who brought her. So he introduces himself, and very fun to see Thrawn say that he recognizes him as a Jedi
Yes. Yeah.
general from the Clone Wars, right? As he obviously studied those things as a part of his Imperial training and knew his work as a general, which is interesting. He would have been a very young general, right? He says he was not much older than Shin when the temple fell, so mid-20s when he was leading troops into battle, right?
Yeah.
Still older than Ahsoka, but interesting. So he says he knows of him as a Jedi. There's a quip here about how he left the Jedi Order and that Balin's not the first to part ways with the Jedi.
Yes.
And that seems like a reference to Anakin. What's your opinion on that?
I would say that, and Dooku obviously also. And Dooku is the reason that all the Night Sisters are dead on.
Yeah, Dathomir. That's a good point.
So, but I mean, I think Thrawn's also. There's that little bit of maybe skepticism, being like, "Yeah, I've heard that before." Or, I don't know.
Yeah, but we also know that the assumption is that he knew that Vader was Anakin.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't know that for sure, but we it's hinted at, right?
Yeah. There's stuff in the books. I don't know if they're canon or not. I don't know. I can't remember anymore. But Thrawn meets Anakin.
A young Anakin, yes. And Vader.
And he also meets Vader later on. So, yeah. And it's implied that Thrawn always kind of figured out that they're the same person. Sure. But, yeah.
So, I mean, I like to think of it as Anakin, especially because we just saw him last week. That's kind of
yes, yeah.
That's my hunch on it. Anyway, Balin tells him that the prisoner Sabine Wren, someone Thrawn obviously knows quite well. I love his kind of like, oh, that's a name. That's a familiar name. And he kind of like, I did enjoy, again, this moment I did quite enjoy. You were quite right. She will be of great use to us, which is like a vindication. I feel like vindication for Balin and kind of like, undermines a little bit of this like snitching.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, it's not cool to snitch on, on your teammates here. Okay. So, Sabine is then brought in front of Thrawn. Any other thoughts on Thrawn's introduction or this?
No, I mean, I just, like I said, this was my favorite part. And obviously it's so cool to get like Lars back and
we should mention that.
Yeah, like get the proper Thrawn voice, because we've been griping a little bit, at least I have, about how sometimes it's hard when you don't get the same voice that we had in Rebels. So, and Thrawn has such a particular voice,
very distinct.
I literally hear it when I like read the Thrawn books. I hear like Lars Mikkelsen's like voice too. So it's
I agree. I was happy when I learned that he was cast in the live action version. I do feel like, maybe I'm tainted a little bit by some of the fan art and other things that we've seen of what Thrawn looked like from the EU and even from the animated series, that I feel like this interpretation of Thrawn in live action, the first time you see him does look a little silly to me.
Yeah.
Like, did you like? It didn't have them like even with the red eyes, didn't feel like it had the menacing nature that I think of when I think of Thrawn. And even like, there's a lot of like fan art where he is based on like a younger Pierce Brosnan or other versions of that, kind of like a stronger jaw and some of these kind of like more intimidating.
Well, remember when
features?
I texted you and told you that when like they first kind of showed his face or something?
Sure.
On like, I don't know if it was a trailer or something. And my issue with it is that his cheekbones aren't as defined.
He's got some puffy cheekbones. I feel like he's just a little chubbier, I think, is part of what it is.
Yeah, a little bit of that too. But it's just again. But when we think about the way I can kind of get around it too is the Rebels animation was kind of weird for some characters and some aspects of characters. So was the Clone Wars, like Dooku's face being like crazy long in Clone Wars.
That's
like
true.
Everybody laughs about like if you took those characters and tried to make them look like exactly like that in real human form, they would look ridiculous. Like it would just look insane. But yeah, I mean, I got over it pretty quick. As soon as he started talking, I was like, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think the voice like really carries it because he's not physically intimidating in any way. His little pot belly and like I just feel like, and like even the uniform I feel like could have like fit better. I mean, maybe you could argue that like him being away for 10 years, I think it is, right? They say 10 years that they've been in exile.
Yeah, around that, I think, for sure.
That in that time, you're gonna look a little. You're gonna let yourself go a little bit potentially. I could see
But then,
that.
what, he sewed himself a new uniform, or is this
No,
the
I mean it's
same
like
uniform?
it's just gotten like old and saggy and like
Tighter, yeah.
doesn't have the same.
Yeah.
So I could make that. You could make that argument. I just feel like I would have liked something with a little bit more definition, especially in the uniform itself. I guess
Gotcha,
think of
yeah.
like Tarkin's uniform. It kind of much more crisp. You feel like the
Yeah.
fabric's thicker.
Well, I think that's the point, though, because it did look a little tattered, like it.
Yeah, no, I see
You
that.
know,
I can see that.
But yeah, but I get what you're saying. Like it's yeah.
And again, this is made on a YouTube video I saw. The comment was like, yeah, technically it's the same color blue as the animated series, but I think it would have been a little bit cooler if he was a little bit darker blue. Like, in live action, like I think they could have taken that, and I'm sure they've tried different variations of it.
I'm sure they did.
But,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it grew on me as the episode went along, but it is weird to just see like a blue person, like.
Yeah, of course it's weird. It's yeah,
yeah. It just fits in
with red eyes
better.
is also weird because Thrawn's like it's not even just his iris that's red. It's like his whole eyeball is red. So yeah, I mean obviously that's kind of a hard alien to portray. But I saw was it a tweet? Someone said it was blue Elon Musk, and that made me laugh a little bit.
It does kind of he does kind of have a little bit of a Muskian look to him.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because Elon Musk sucks.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I think that's fair to mention about I think I would be interested to see what people thought of him as someone who's never seen him before. Like I hope the characterization of him comes through and is like a little bit more menacing. I think they do enough work with that in this episode to make that come through, but
yes,
again,
I
it would be
think so.
interesting to hear. Again, not the physically imposing villain that people might have expected, but that's fine. So Sabine is brought in front of Thrawn. What a delight to see a familiar face, he says, which is a fun little dig, basically. He thanks her for helping him escape, and she cuts straight to the point, demanding to see Ezra. Thrawn comments that this focus to see her long-lost friend will, quote-unquote, reshape their galaxy. We talked about this earlier, but he's basically really making it explicit, like, hey, you sold out your entire galaxy to find your friend, who, by the way, might be dead.
Yeah.
And he just I think this is interesting, right? He says Thrawn says that he intends to honor Balin's agreement, going as far as giving her amount, provisions, and even pointing her in the right direction. He does also note that once his ship leaves, they'll likely be stuck there forever with no way home. He also mentioned that Ezra might be dead and that she's going out on a fool's errand, though she quips that if Thrawn can make it, so can Ezra. The most interesting part, though, is that Thrawn can't really understand why she would gamble the fate of the galaxy on the belief that her friend may be alive.
Yeah.
And, I think we know that Thrawn's really intelligent. We know he's a tactical genius, all these things that we know from previous versions or from the expanded universe, etc. But, his weak spot, I guess, is this idea of friendship and loyalty and
Well,
so
his character's always been very like fascinated by like other cultures and other because he kind of like collects a lot of stuff, right? You see it when he has like Hera's like Calicori in Rebels, like her family.
Did she ever get that back, by the way? I guess not. Hey.
Yeah, Kanan steals it back for her.
Steals it? Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, no, she gets it back because then she puts Kanan's little
yes, that's right.
Like ponytail on it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's always kind of like studied other cultures to like understand how they would react tactically. So to him, this doesn't make like tactical sense, right? Like he's like, why exactly? Like, why would you risk the fate of everything for one person like that? That would definitely never make sense in his world.
Yeah, I also think it's a self-inflated sense of importance in terms of his impact on the galaxy. Right?
Well, yeah.
I feel like I feel like they've been feeding him kind of this, like, you're going to return and conquer the galaxy.
Right? Yeah. Like, does he know, like, that everything's collapsed? Like, I guess he does.
He must have some insight, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I don't know if he knows everything. I don't know. It's not clear how well they were able to communicate back and forth. And again, it's like, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, my curiosity with this and my kind of hope a little bit is that he is using the Night Sisters kind of the same way that they're using him. Like, it seems like they want off this planet for whatever reason, but he also wants off this planet. And, like, maybe he's just saying, like, okay, yeah, I'll come back and rule the galaxy once more. And maybe that is his motivation. But I think in kind of this exact moment, though, his motivation is to just get back first, and then
Yeah,
we'll maybe see.
sure, that's fair,
So,
and he does say that explicitly later. And I do like his response to when she says, "You wouldn't understand." He's like, "No, I
mhm.
guess I wouldn't,"
Yeah.
which is like an interesting. I feel like that's a fun little thing from a villain to do.
Yeah. Well, he's very
Um,
much like a sociopath. Like, he just has
yeah.
no, like, real emotions or, like, love for people.
Were you surprised that he just let her go?
Not really, because, again, with Thrawn, he's always been super tactical and kind of one step ahead. I'm like, obviously he's gonna follow her, and like he's
Yeah,
just
that's
gonna
kind of
try to
like
get to Ezra through Sabine. Like, that's for sure his motivation. My only thing that like bugs me about this whole thing is he is this like tactical genius, and like he hasn't been able to catch and find Ezra in 10 years. Like, I
I feel like it's more like, and someone compared this to like, by the way, we mentioned Neverland earlier, but
yeah,
to like Peter Pan and Hook
Captain
and
Hook.
Pan, yeah, but like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like doesn't if assuming Ezra left the ship pretty early on in that
Yeah.
process, is Ezra really their biggest issue? Like
Yeah,
from a
probably not.
tactical perspective, it's like who cares if there's a Jedi maybe dead, maybe not down
Yeah, it's
in the
true.
Badlands. He can't get to me,
Yeah.
so I can see him just kind of being like, whatever, I don't really care about that
Yeah,
person's
that's
fate.
true. Yeah.
Um, and I the thing is, they mentioned this earlier. I mean, Balin says it that her desire to see her long lost friend blinds her. Right.
Right.
This is the most transparent shit. Like, no shit, they're gonna follow you to get to Ezra. Like,
100%.
duh. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and like it does. It just seems like she doesn't like acknowledge that. She doesn't seem to realize that. I think
No.
that's frustrating. It makes her seem dumb, and I don't think she is. But
Well, exactly.
you know,
It's like she's not thinking one step ahead like they are. And I
she's being
think
very
that
reactive. Yeah.
Sabine would have a little bit more common sense, at least to cover her tracks or her
Yeah.
trails or whatever. Yeah.
Sabine is then taken down to a lower level and is greeted with an animal to ride. It's like a part wolf, part rat thing called a
Yeah.
howler.
I liked it.
It's
It has like a
yeah,
crocodile mouth or alligator mouth. I don't know. Whatever one has the wider mouth.
yeah,
I always get them mixed up. And like bat ears and then a dog body.
yeah. It's really cool at first, and then they make it look very menacing the first time you see
Hmm.
it. And you're like, ooh, that's a scary creature. And then, first of all, I think the effects on the howler is like top notch.
So
Like,
good.
it's so impressive how they make riding it look real
Yeah.
in my opinion. Um,
Yeah, it looks
and
great. And just all of its little like nuances, its little movements that it makes that are so dog-like or so cute.
Oh my god.
I really
That one
liked it.
scene where she's like trying to like get out of here,
Oh, I
and he's just
know.
like as someone who
Yeah.
has a dog myself who's such a good boy.
Yeah.
He it was very cute to me. It definitely worked
Yeah.
on me. So absolutely, we've harped on the maybe effects in the show or Star Wars recently. That wasn't the case here. I think it looks much better.
Yeah.
So Enoch is here because they don't want to pay a bunch of people for spoken lines. So Enoch warns her that there are, quote, nomads who wander the wastelands and prey upon each other for survival. He returns her weapons, including the lightsaber, and then says to her, "Die well," which is pretty cool in my
Yeah.
opinion. I don't, that's that's really cool.
It's a pretty good parting phrase. I'm gonna start
Yeah,
saying that when I
yeah,
leave
yeah.
places.
Die well, then you like put your hand over your fist over your heart or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Blood and honor or something like that.
Yes.
Strength and honor. That's what it is. That's from Spartacus. So she leaves the castle on her mount with Thrawn, Balin, and Shin watching. Morgan is also there, but she doesn't say anything. Shin thinks she's on a fool's errand, which again, obviously she is.
Yeah.
From their perspective, right? Wasting her time looking for someone who has no impact on what's going on. I think they'll find out that won't be the case. You would think. I mean, Thrawn specifically says to not underestimate a Jedi, but it really feels like he's underestimating a Jedi right at this exact moment. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But he says he lets Balin and Shin follow, quote unquote, at their own pace, which is like, yeah, like duh. Like, obviously they're not going to follow at any specific prescribed pace. But anyway, they plan on using her to find Ezra and ultimately kill them both. Yeah, a pretty transparent plan, to be honest.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention about this section?
No, I don't think so.
Okie dokie, moving on. Now to the wastelands, and this is the first time we've kind of been like on the boots on the ground on this planet. Sabine rides through the wastes and stops to do a scan. This is the same device that we saw Hera using earlier. It's also the same device that Han uses to look for Luke on Hoth.
Yes, okay.
And as she scans, the Howler gets a sniff of something. She's ambushed as her scanner shot out of her hand. And I just got to mention that I think that Sabine looks really cool in her like poncho outfit here.
Yeah,
very Western style. I mean, she holds her own pretty good against these bandits who have really cool armor, by the way. In my opinion.
They looked kind of like samurais a little bit to me, like the helmets.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%. It's just a cool look. It's a little still too Star Warsy for me. I'd like a little something more alien, considering we're in a different galaxy. But they might be from the Star Wars galaxy, so it's hard to say. I just feel like you could imagine like people somehow ending up here accidentally somehow, and then being stuck here.
Yeah.
So I like that idea, kind of as like a once you're here, you cannot leave type of situation.
This is again like that. What I was saying before about my gripe about like how we're in a full another galaxy, but it doesn't feel like it.
It's also just one planet.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's like just like this galaxy is a planet, which is it's like it's like in like Star Wars in video games, even Star Wars video games, when you go to a planet is just a city or a planet is just a town.
Oh yeah,
you know, even like even the Bad Batch does this. Like, oh, you go to a planet and you go to the one town, one village. That is there, right? It's like it's
Yeah,
classic
they just happen to know where like their buddies are in their ship on this entire planet. Yeah,
it's an entire planet, but they're all within walking distance from each other. So, like the only time I feel like that was like they're like, oh, there's another in Bad Batch when they lose their ship. It's like, oh, there's another outpost, many kilometers away. Like that's the first time I ever felt like, oh, that seems realistic, but. Almost never is that the case, but it's a minor gripe. It's classic Star Wars stuff, so it doesn't really matter. So she holds her own. She tries to use her blasters and Mando armor, but there's too many of them, and she's ultimately disarmed before she decides to ignite her lightsaber, and then basically takes them all out really easily after that.
Yeah.
She even deflects a blaster bolt into one of their faces. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I didn't catch that one.
She does a move where she kind of she just deflects it back into right before she was probably looked like she was about to slice him anyway. But it deflects the blaster bolt right back into his face, it like leaves a hole in his helmet, like smoking hole. It's pretty cool. With the scanner destroyed and her Howler missing, she heads out off on her own. I thought it was a pretty cool fight sequence.
Yeah,
that's my opinion on that. It's got to see both her Mando stuff and her Jedi stuff. Interesting that her Jedi weapon is the what ultimately saved her. Maybe a sign that she's maybe evolving a little bit as a Padawan. I don't know. Maybe reading into it too much, but I thought it was a cool fight sequence. Anything you want to add?
No, I just liked it, and like I said, I liked their armor, but again, I totally agree with you too. That would have been cool to see something a little bit more alien. But either way, it was a good fight sequence, and
these
it's nice
aliens
to see
aren't alien enough.
Yeah, they're speaking another language, but that's about it. It's like Adam and I were joking that they were just like Tusken
Raiders.
It's just like
they
a
do
different
sound like
version of
Tusken Raiders.
Yeah,
they sound like it. So yeah,
just like
I thought
slightly dressed differently.
Yeah. And on this planet, the Tusken Raiders wear armor.
Yeah. They're red. Yeah.
So back at the castle, we get probably the coolest shot of the episode, where you see Balin and Shin leaving the castle, which also might be a reference to Lord of the Rings, and then it pans up through the tower and up along the tower, and then up to Thrawn's ship. Hovering over top. It's like that's such a cool concept for
really
a camera
neat.
Pan. Badass. So obviously the camera points to the ship, so we cut to the ship, and Enoch is reporting to Thrawn that the mercenaries have left to follow Sabine. Thrawn has Enoch prepare 2 squads of troopers to stand by for Balin's signal, to support them when they find them. Morgan is worried that that's not enough men, but Thrawn kind of shuts her down pretty quickly by noting that their, quote, numbers have dwindled, so 2 squads will be enough. I also really like his kind of like, his very specific, and this is why having Thrawn here, Thrawn as played by Lars Mikkelsen, works, because his response here just feels so natural. Be like, no, our men are dwindled, 2 squads will be enough. And like, that ends the argument, closes the topic, right? And there's no argument with him. So I think that was pretty. It made him feel very much in power here. He says ultimately though he doesn't really care about the outcome of that mission. He's like, whether they get killed or get left behind, whether that could be for Ezra and Sabine and her mercenaries, ultimately doesn't matter as long as they're able to leave the galaxy.
Yeah,
which,
exactly.
When push comes to shove, is probably what he should really be caring about most anyway. So that's fair to say. Anyway, just thought that was cool. I like how Enoch kind of like waits when she says like, "What about maybe we more men?" He's like, "Do I need more men?"
Yeah.
And then he's like, "No, okay, good." And then he leaves. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of cool. Yeah. Back to the wasteland. Sabine is being followed by her howler. She's pissed that it abandoned her.
Yeah.
We get a very cute sequence as he follows her anyway, even though she's trying to like shoo him away.
Yeah.
To me, what really does the work here, it's the tongue.
Yeah.
And the tail.
And the tail. Like
90% of the work. You can know if he's in a good mood because his tail starts wagging.
Yeah.
Or his tongue sticking out. And he'd just be scary to looking very lovable very quickly. It's like a master class in making someone like.
Okay, I don't know what happened, but I can't hear you.
Oh,
you're back.
I'm back? Okay. Or we'll just pretend nothing happened.
Yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah. Maybe it was your internet. I don't know. Maybe it's Zencaster being crappy again.
Could be.
Although they're doing some interesting stuff. I got to give Zencaster credit. They've stabilized the platform a lot. And the money seems to be the money that we pay, which is an exorbitant amount of money in my opinion for the service that they offer, seems to be going to interesting things. So
there we go.
Anyway.
But yeah, I liked his little trots, like his little dog trots, because like 100%. Dogs do their like happy trot or they're like sad, like I'm in trouble, kind of like hunched. It was very, I don't know. I just thought they nailed the movements like so good.
100%. This is how we know that. This is how we know he's a dog person.
Yeah, exactly.
I also like. I had Winston with me. He was watching the show with me, and I just felt like they. As you said, they just absolutely nailed those little mannerisms that dogs have that make them so lovable, that show their personality, right? This howler happens to be very loyal, despite knowing that he made a mistake.
Yeah,
bad about it.
She calls him a coward.
Like, yeah, right. I knew you're a coward.
Yeah,
yeah, it's so funny. Anyway, big fan of this howler. Needs a name. That's the. And also the sounds it makes are pretty cute.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you want to name it?
What do I want to name it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Howley.
Howley. Sure. Howie.
Howie the Howler. That's how I like it. Okay. Yeah. So Sabine and Howie follow this. Like, so she eventually reconnects with Howie, and I really kind of like this because it's similar to how Ezra is able to connect with animals. She might not know that she's doing it on a conscious level, but there is an element of, hey, if you trust in the world and nature, you'll find what you're looking for. And she does. She said, "Oh, it has a scent. I'm not sure what it's smelling necessarily,
right?
But she's willing to, similar to Ahsoka last week, saying, I don't know where it's going, but it's better than going nowhere."
Yeah.
Trust Howie, and they follow the scent to some small rocky outcropping. At first, she's confused, thinking that the beast was just, wanted some water, but it still has a scent and starts kind of licking a rock. Yeah. Turns out that rock is a little crab person. Crab people. Crab people. Talk like crabs, look like people. That's a South Park reference.
I don't know what this is from.
It's a South Park reference, yeah.
Oh my god.
So similar to a hermit crab, it lives in its little like shell. Although it does wear clothes, I think that's important to note.
Yes.
And based on the subtitles, is a noti.
Noti, yes,
a noti, according to the subtitles. So, Very
Or,
adorable.
this planet's version of a Jawa. Just like a little nomadic
Yeah,
thing.
I guess. I suppose. Yeah, they're nomads. It's true. It's like God. It's almost too much the same.
Yeah,
Now that you
these
mention
guys
it.
seem like they're a lot nicer than Jawas, though. Jawas are kind of shitty.
Yeah, I agree. They're just like too easily bought.
They just like knock you out and steal shit, and yeah,
Yeah, right. Or sell it back to you, which
or
is always
kill you.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, I I once again think they nailed the effects on this. I can't tell if it's if it's like practical effects and
yeah. No,
CG
me
or
neither.
combination or one or the other. I don't know, and the fact that you don't know, I think, is a sign that it's successful.
Yes,
So
yeah,
I wasn't seeing effects so much as I was seeing a character, and I thought that was really well executed. I love how Howie like wants to eat it so bad.
yeah,
I just think that's a fun. Any idea that when there's like an animal that has it's like your animal friend but wants to
yeah,
eat another friend. I think that's always a fun dynamic. But Sabine calms it down. Sabine then attempting to make peace puts her weapons down, but the toady in that process notices her phoenix pauldron
yeah.
and starts to like be like, "Hey, I wear a necklace with this thing," which is weird. But hey, why not? And turns out the emblem is a direct connection to Ezra.
Yeah.
She says Ezra's name. They know how to say his name. Um, and he wakes up his nearby friends. Turns out there's more of them around. And they have a little chat amongst themselves. They seem to know who Ezra is and gesture for her to follow them. She's proud. I love how she looks to Howie and she's like, "Hey, you know what? Good boy for not eating the crab people. Good
Yeah.
work. And also good work finding them. Right? I
Yeah.
think it's like it's a good boy right there. Certified member of the Good Boys Club. By the way, did you notice that when we cut to the like a shot of the castle earlier? I think it's earlier in the episode. You can see two howlers like howling at the moon on the top of a
Yes,
cliff.
yes.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Classic Dave Filoni stuff. Any other thoughts about the toady or anything that happens in this
No,
moment?
I mean, like, they were cute. It's yeah,
Not as cute as the baby, in my opinion, but
the
that baby
baby.
toady, the one in the little hammock.
Oh,
Oh,
with the
yeah.
big eyes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's always cute when they give things bigger eyes when they're little because
I agree.
hey, did you know that that's a biological thing?
Yes, your eyes
That
stay the same size your entire life.
yeah,
Yeah.
like babies, but they have I don't know, they just say that they have big eyes like that too because it immediately makes you like them and want to take care of them
It's true, and also
because they're
genetically
cute.
speaking, like domesticated dogs have those puppy dog eyes.
Yeah, yeah,
You're like, oh, you
exactly.
can't say no to those puppy dog eyes. You're like, go
Yeah.
boys, and you're like, apparently, wolves don't have those, and even huskies don't really have those.
Yeah.
And um, when they've done studies where they domesticated foxes, for instance, which there's
Right.
not many of
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
they developed more like puppy dog style eyeballs
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like expressions because it like endeared them to the people more and the people to them
Yeah.
and ultimately if you're relying on humans for
For
sustenance and
food,
for
yeah.
life and all that stuff, then you want to be able to establish a bond so that for what genetically speaking, that is like a an adaptation that helps them. So
Yeah.
pretty cute.
Helps us take care of our own kids too, apparently.
Yeah,
They got big
apparently.
eyes, we think they're cute, and you're like,
Imagine if they didn't have big eyes, you'd be like, this stupid thing, this
yeah,
stupid bag of flesh.
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh
Uh,
yeah, I'd say like with this whole thing, I don't know. I don't know if I'm like I like it to make the story move faster, but
I
it kind of bugs me how
it's a
quickly
little
she's just
plotting,
yeah,
in my
like
opinion.
how easy it was for her to find, like a trail
Yeah,
immediately, but
I guess, but at the same time, I also felt like this episode felt slow anyway. So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, fair enough.
well, she had one encounter, then she has a little chat with her dog, then she finds these people, and then these people take her there. So it's like 4 scenes,
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah,
and like I guess that's long enough. But again, as we talked about before, the introduction of Ezra here feels like a missed opportunity. It feels like a little bit of a
yeah,
lull.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I agree largely, but also we only have so many episodes. We gotta get
Well,
we gotta get to
exactly,
it.
yeah.
So back with Shin and Balin, they're following her, so they're in the wasteland as well. They investigate the scene of Sabine's ambush, noting that she must have survived. Obviously, we know that. Shin asks if he knows Ezra. He says he doesn't, as he's too young, which this checks out, because he was, pretty young when the Empire, right?
No,
How
he
old
wasn't
was
even.
he? He was born in Empire
He
when
was
the
born on
born on the
Empire
he
on
was
Empire
right,
Day
right,
is his
right, right,
birthday.
right,
So
right,
he was
right, right,
basically
right, right.
born right when the Empire fell.
Right. So he was a newborn baby when
Yeah.
Balin was a 20-something-year-old,
Yeah.
surviving Anakin and the
Yeah.
troopers in the Jedi Temple.
Exactly. Yeah.
Kind of cool, by the way, that we find out that he was at the temple when
Yeah.
that happened,
Yeah.
which is in and of itself pretty cool because I can't imagine there are a lot of those Jedi survived, um, except for Jar Jar. He survived. And well, yeah, Jedi version of Jar Jar who saves
Right.
Grogu.
Right.
Anyway, he says that he's a
Oh
Boken
yes.
Jedi. You've got us.
Sorry,
You're
I
like
don't.
connecting the dots
You
there.
were talking.
Yeah.
I thought you meant actual Jar Jar, and I was like, "What
No,
the
no,
fuck are you
no.
talking about?" And I
I'm
was
trying
like,
to remember who
"Oh, the
Jar Jar is.
actor. Yes, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Yes."
So he says that that Ezra is a Boken Jedi who was trained in the wild after the temple fell. Which, in and of itself, trained in the wild is a cool term. Which is like,
It is cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the idea of Boken Jedi, we actually saw. It's a nice kind of callback to the early in the season, so episode 3, when Sabine is training with Hu Yang. She's using
Yes.
a Boken that is a wooden Japanese training sword, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's kind of this idea that they're not as powerful as a real sword, not as powerful as a real Jedi because they were trained differently.
Oh, I like that.
It is a cool concept. Shin then compares Ezra to herself, which, by the way, I like the idea that she's kind of looking for analogs to. She doesn't know anyone who's like her, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
there's also the potential that Shin could turn to the light side because she could see a connection with Ezra. I think that there's an interesting dynamic there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shin compares Ezra to herself, but Balin said that she wasn't trained to be a Jedi like he was. Instead, she was trained to be something more, which, again, also kind of compares as an analog to Ahsoka, right? Training Sabine to, not in the same way that the Jedi were trained, and obviously not choosing to train Sabine at all goes against what the Jedi would have done. So
yes.
she is, in a way, being trained to be something more herself. So,
yeah.
There's some direct analogs there. I think, it's Star Wars. It rhymes, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I'm also curious if he means like a little bit stronger too. Like he's teaching her to wield, obviously maybe a little bit of the dark side of the Force too. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it's possible. That's a good point.
Yeah.
We still don't know if she's her daughter or not. So.
Right. Yeah.
So she asks if he misses the order, which is maybe the first time. Like, this might be the most lines of dialogue she's ever had in this entire series so far.
She usually just has like 1 or 2 words. Like she doesn't say much. Yeah, witches.
Yeah. So she asks if he misses the order, and he says he misses the idea of the order, not the truth, the weakness. There is no future with them, right? And again, I think this is a totally like hyper accurate representation, and also it feels like an analog to, I think, a lot of fans of maybe our generation who have a connection to the prequels, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, but the Jedi Order is so cool, all these Jedi and their lightsabers everywhere. It's like, how cool is that, right? And he's kind of saying, I miss the idea of that. I think most people, when they think of the Jedi, they like the idea of the Jedi. But if you look at who the Jedi were at the time of the prequels and the time of the Clone Wars, they had already fallen from grace. They were already deceived. Even their greatest Jedi, Yoda, couldn't see the dark side clouds at all. Whatever he says. And it's like, they couldn't even see in front of their own face, basically, to realize that they were being manipulated by Palpatine, who is literally right in front of them, right? So, the truth is that they were weak, that they allowed themselves to be corrupted. And I've been thinking about how Mace Windu gets a bad rap. People really don't like Mace and calling it Ahsoka citizen, and not granting Anakin the rank of master and all these things. But ultimately, he just represents what is kind of a bureaucratic version of the Jedi at that time, right? He is a reflection of who the Jedi are in that era, and it's like he's kind of like the cop. He's a cop, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's too much politics, right? Like we like the training aspect and the meditation aspect of Jedis and like the Jedi temple, but
the mystical side of it,
point, not the boring political like council of guys sitting around making decisions. Yeah.
And this is what Jade's Dooku and what Jade's even his Padawan. Why am I blanking on his name? No. Qui-Gon, right?
Oh, Qui-Gon, yes.
He gets him. He doesn't always agree with the council because there's a lot of like diplomatic, like they're diplomats, right? And not monks, basically, right? So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Anyway, he's totally right on. No future with them. There was no future with them because they died. So that's a different problem. She seems skeptical. Shin does. Of his current plan, mentioning like, hey, like you don't see a future with the Jedi, but you see a future in this wasteland. Like, what are we even doing here, right? But Baylan takes a different view, that it's not a wasteland, it's a historic site, right? The remains of the great witch kingdom of Dathomir, right? Which he says is confirmed by the appearance of the Great Mothers, right? And then we see these kind of like etchings in the stones and we already saw the big statues and all that stuff. It's like, I think that is a different perspective. This isn't a wasteland so much as it is like a archaeological site.
Right. Yeah.
That is full of history and interesting stories, right? And obviously he also notes that there's something else stirring here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't you hear it? Something stirs here. Can't you see it? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And which seems a little redundant, but like at the same time, it's like it does add to that air of mystery. I think a lot of the mystery at this point of the series is gone. Thrawn's back. We know what he's about. Ezra's back. We know what he's about, largely speaking. So now there's still this one lingering thing. A, how do they get back? Right? They're presumably not going to get a ride on the Chimera. And B, what is this kind of like great power that they're searching for? And that's still lingering.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's something real cool. Like, what if it's another like Bendu?
Oh, that would be really
right?
cool. What if it was just Bendu?
And yeah, Bendu showed up here, right? Yeah.
Bendu's one of my favorite Star Wars characters.
He's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just hope it's something big and cool and menacing.
I don't know. The Screen Crush is like, oh, it's probably going to be a big force creature, like a force dragon or something that's like hiding underneath this,
well, like
underneath the planet.
Bendu is, or what's that? Like that creepy hole that pulls to Rey. It's like the dark side, right?
Yeah, on
Ahch-To. Yeah, like things like that. Like, it's either that or it's some like dark
a place of power.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I'm
assuming, but
my assumption is that it's a gateway to the world between worlds.
Or that, yes, yeah.
And that the witches could never figure out how to open it because they didn't understand.
Yeah, maybe.
Right. He says that he thinks that the witches might be fleeing something, right? It's that
like they're scared of something, yeah.
Right. So I wonder, and because they want to leave, and I wouldn't want to stay there very long either. It's interesting. We just don't know the answer. It is a fascinating mystery. We'll continue to follow that. Shin spots some bandits watching them, but they agree not to take any action yet. Quoting the "enemy of me, my enemy is my friend" thing, which I don't know is going to work out for them. Like they might think that, given that they're like standing over their buddies' dead bodies, that they might have been the ones that killed them. So we'll see. We'll see. Any other thoughts about this exchange? Again, anytime that Shin and Baylan are talking to each other, it seems like there's like a lot to like unpack and
yeah. I do like their conversations, and I'm just more curious about them. Like, it's sad that we only get 2 more episodes with Baylan, so we'll see what happens with his character, but I'm just kind of excited to see what they're gonna do with the 2 of them.
Yeah, I agree. It's just we don't know the fates. It's just there's so many things that can still happen. Here's what I'm doing. I'm shipping Shin and Ezra. That's me. That's my plan from now on. Yeah, Shin and Ezra. That like, the Shinzra, I'll call them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like Thrawn takes off with the Night Sisters, and then Ahsoka shows up in the whales, and then
and she's like, I found a new friend. Yeah, and then she's like, oh man, that Baylan guy, what a downer. Hey. That's what that's how it'll go, and they're like, "Let's have babies." That because that's how the shippers always kind of handle it.
Yeah.
Anyway, look for Shinzra fanfic.
Oh my god!
On the fanfic website. I actually don't know where you would even find those, but anyway, I'm sure they already exist.
Probably Reddit. I don't know.
Yeah, almost certainly Reddit. Okay, so back at the Toady village. The Toady escorts Sabine to the village, which is kind of like this nomadic village. The stuff is kind of made out of. They have technology, but it's like kind of like hacked together. It seems like. And as she walks through, we see the Toady in more detail, including the baby one we mentioned earlier. And it seems like a quaint society, right? They kind of they live together, support each other. They are always on the move so that they can't be pinned down, that kind of thing. They offer her food, which she refuses, but as she takes, she looks around and takes it all in. From behind her, we hear none other than Ezra. And by the way, this actor who plays Ezra here, what's his name? Iman Esfandi really nails, and we said this in the first episode, but he nails like his Ezra's voice like to a T. It is
it's very good. It's very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that bugs me is the blue contacts.
Well, he has super blue eyes, so like, what
I know
are you
he
gonna do
does.
about it,
I know it's hard. Every time I see any character wearing blue contacts, you can always just like tell it just looks off. But
well, that's because most people who have dark hair and dark features don't have big blue eyes. That's not very common.
I guess so. I just think the whatever contact company people need to do a better job of making more realistic blue color contacts.
Well, or just do whatever they did with Thrawn and just do it digitally, which I assume that's what they did.
Or that, yeah. But I think they're like purposely trying to make his eyes super bright too, like they are in Rebels. So
yeah, and like I would have been fine if that wasn't the case. I didn't even notice the first time. I only noticed it the second time because I was looking for it. So, she's obviously excited to see him. And he says, "I knew I could count on you, though it did take you long enough." It's a fun first line for Ezra to say. He's in very good spirits here. I love his outfit. I think he looks really kind of...
His outfit is very cool.
Yeah, he's got like chainmail over like a robe. It looks like something out of like Arthurian tale. It looks it's badass in my opinion.
I like his beard.
Yeah, he looks like his dad from
he does actually. Yeah.
Which is cute. And he's like, and she's like, oh, always having a plan, but not a good one. And he's like, well, it worked, didn't it? And she says it did, but like, there's no follow up in terms of like, hey, there was a Death Star, we blew it up, and all this other stuff that happened, right? That's just kind of all glossed over. And I think there is something interesting about the idea that a Star Wars character who was involved in the rebellion missing all of that, and then by the way, now there's a whole new republic. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
They're a little bit stupid, but we're working on it. There's there's something interesting there that they just again not touching on. There's still next episode to try that, to get into that,
of course,
but to explore the emotions of someone who had so much at stake, finding out that there was good news, waiting, not having any way of knowing that it worked out, but having to have faith that it did. Like all that stuff is fascinating, but again, not touched on here.
Yeah.
And I think robs the scene of a lot of emotion. This scene is, to me, missing a lot of emotion. I feel like a reunion of this type should make me want to start crying.
Well,
I drop of a hat, so.
Yeah, I found it really just, I don't know, odd.
It's
like
hollow.
The way that she just like laughs and like looks to the side and like shakes her head. I don't know. It just felt a little too like sarcastic, I guess. I wanted a little bit more
Rebels
like emotion.
for you, though,
I
right?
guess, but they haven't seen each other in 10 years. Like,
right.
I don't know.
Why like hug him first? Like just jump right to the hug.
I think
like,
maybe that's what it was. Like it should have just been a little bit more of that like emotion, or it was like a little bit too bantery immediately for me. But
I agree, and I think part of it is that musically they could have been more.
Maybe
it could have been more on like you can really be manipulative with music to kind of drive emotion. I don't know if they intentionally chose not to, but I feel like the music was pretty flat here, which ultimately made the scene feel flat and emotionally flat. So again, just a missed opportunity. I mean, maybe we can explore some of this stuff in more detail, but you only get one opportunity to introduce a character like this to a new audience. Yeah, and I don't know if this is I don't know if this was the best way to do it. Again, I agree that he looks great. He certainly seems to embody the character well. But I can't wait to see what he does with a lightsaber or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but I'm surprised he was like, "You're riding a howler? How'd you do that? Like, aren't you supposed to be like so great at like connecting with animals? Like, how I don't understand." Anyway, so there's work to be done here, is my opinion on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's surprised how she found him, but she doesn't really want to get into it. Again, kind of ignoring a lot of that stuff, which I kind of understand that. You don't need to retread the whole series. Just wanting to enjoy the moment, also kind of understandable. Ezra says something to the toady and asks her to help them pack up their nomadic he says, "I can't wait to go home," which is by the first time I was like, wow, he really sounds like Ezra from the cartoon.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
the way he says "want to go home" is like straight out of the hollow he left for in Rebels. It's very
Right.
interesting.
Yes.
And then there's this like look of shame or like I got some bad news, but she doesn't want to
Well,
break
yeah,
it to him.
because she hasn't
You know?
told him yet. Like, well,
Yeah.
you
By
got
the
here
way,
with Thrawn, or yeah, with the
yeah,
bad guys.
yeah.
So yeah.
So what emotion is she feeling there? What's she expressing? Is it
Well,
guilt?
I think it's guilt because she basically is lying to him right now.
Yeah.
Like he thinks that okay, sweet, Sabine got here. I'm gonna hop on her ship and we're gonna go home, and that's not what's gonna happen. Like it's as far as she knows, she's like,
Yeah.
okay, now we have to figure out how am I gonna get him home, and I don't want to tell him yet that I gave the bad guys the key to get here. So
Right, because he would be like, "Hey, you just undid all the work I did.
Yeah, exactly.
I was here for 10 years, and then you made it all worthless.
Yeah,
by
exactly.
by trying to come find me through these means.
Yeah.
Again, that's an interesting dynamic that I don't know. There's a kind of like a frustration that he might feel. I don't know if they'll get into that, but there's potential for something interesting there. I hope they don't gloss over that like they did a lot of stuff in this scene. Cool to see him in live action, though. Give you that.
Yeah.
Back at Thrawn's ship for the final scene, the Great Mothers have asked to speak with Thrawn. They say that the thread of fate has spoken to us. Another comes, a Jedi. They ride the travelers. Obviously speaking about Ahsoka. Thrawn suspects it's the quote-unquote recently deceased Ahsoka Tano, despite Morgan Elsbeth assuring her that she is dead. Thrawn pushes back, saying that she shouldn't underestimate a Jedi, even though I think he literally just did that, saying that death and resurrection are common deceptions played out by both King's Night Sisters and Jedi, right? I love the idea of someone being so practical, having to handle or kind of grapple with these mystical things that are really hard to explain or unexplainable at all, right? It's essentially I mean, he is usually literally using Night Sister magic, but again, it is this fun dynamic between someone who's so practical with this kind of mystical side. I think it's a fun combination. But he's basically saying like, hey, Balin might have said she was dead, but Balin was once a Jedi, so we have to consider him flawed, and therefore we must consider Ahsoka to be alive until proven otherwise, and asks for Morgan to provide him with as much information about Ahsoka as possible so he can prepare for her arrival. This is obviously in line with how we know he prepares for battle, right? And studies them and all that kind of stuff. So, it'll be interesting to see how he brings that to bear on Ahsoka. There's a lot of, and I think it's worth noting that Ahsoka joined, left the show of Rebels right around the same time that that
Thrawn enters
the picture.
Yeah. He didn't
so
really,
they don't really know each
interact
other.
with her. No, they don't.
So it's interesting. I mean, I guess again, they've communicated somehow that she knew that there was a Jedi that was, working against them in some way, knew that her name was Ahsoka Tano, but doesn't really know much else. So he's going to learn more. I think that does have a juicy potential to be interesting, in my opinion. He also tells her to destroy any incoming space whales with prejudice, which, in my opinion, is a mistake because it's going to just anger them, and those are pretty big creatures, and they're probably going to potentially damage your only way home.
Well,
so,
especially when they already messed up with his shit once, like you'd think.
Exactly, right? It seems a little short-sighted.
Maybe not want to piss them off again. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not Thrawn's brightest moment here, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think they'll try to, and I don't think it's going to go as they hoped, right?
Yeah.
He then asked the Great Mothers for their assistance using their dark magic. And they said, the thread of destiny demands it, Grand Admiral. Which, again, I don't really understand what they're talking about here. Like, what does he need them to do? Do you need them to, like, power up his soldiers? Or, like, provide more insight by reading the future? Or, I don't know. It's left ambiguous. We don't know yet.
I guess maybe we'll see next week what kind of creepy magic he's doing with them.
Yeah, do you have any theories? I really don't know.
I don't know. Because it's whatever. He says this like after he finds out about Ahsoka coming, so I don't know. Maybe he needs more. He feels like he needs more backup, like he needs more dead soldiers, or if that is the correct theory, and a lot of his soldiers are undead. But I'm just trying to think, like, because Yeah, I don't know. Night Sisters can do some pretty crazy stuff, so I guess we'll just have to see. I'm not quite sure where they're going to go
Yeah,
with that, but
I don't
unless
know.
he just wants them to like look into the future, but I feel like that's boring. I want to see something cooler. So,
Yeah, I think it has to be something cooler.
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate because there's just too many possibilities. Magic
Yeah,
can do anything,
exactly.
so there's really no way. Anyway, we cut to credits. We get some bombastic and ominous music playing. It's really cool before we get to the typical credits music. Any final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's after dissecting it, I like it a little bit more than originally how I felt about it, but I think I was just a
You like it a
little
little
bit
bit
disappointed.
more. Yeah. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
fair. I think I liked it a little bit more than the first time I watched it, which felt
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I wanted to feel more in this
Yeah,
episode,
yeah.
and then in retrospect, there's more kind of things to dive into and kind of think about, which gives it
Yeah.
a little bit more legs. But
But
ultimately,
it's
disappointing
just
to me. Yeah,
it's like surface level things, I guess, that I just like I said, I would have liked a bit of a cooler planet, but hey, maybe next week they're gonna show us something that show us
maybe
what the Night
there's a
Sisters are
bunch of
scared of.
underground tunnels that are like all made of crystals or something, and it's really cool. I don't know. Who knows?
See, what they should have done with this planet is and not done with the last one we were at, like with the red trees. Like if this
Yeah.
planet was all red trees, that would have looked cool to me. Like that would have
Yeah,
been enough. I would have been like,
it's like,
that's
oh,
super
that's
cool.
different. Yeah, most
Yeah.
trees are green.
Yeah.
Like,
I'd have been like, oh neat.
yeah.
But I don't know. Like I said, it's surface level gripes that I have. So hopefully next week when we maybe see what these Night Sisters are scared of and why they think they need to flee and what Balin is sensing, like maybe we'll get a little bit more a little bit more from this new galaxy because
Yeah, or it might just end up being just one planet, and we go back to the regular
yeah.
galaxy, and that's fine. I really, it's like ultimately everything we care about is back over there anyways.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
it
That's
is
true.
what it is. Um, yeah, I don't know. The episode was pretty good. It had some really high. The highs were high, the lows were
Yeah.
pretty low in my opinion. It's a little bumpy, a little slow. Had some very cool visuals. But there's still a lingering mystery that I think is compelling.
Yeah.
Thrawn feels like he's, it's like an old shoe, right? Just like feels like it's like slid right back on and is like fits perfectly into everything that's going on. Like and that's really cool. Despite maybe the not the most epic first introduction of the character, his ship does a lot of the work, as we said. And again, I think they really dropped the ball on the Ezra introduction. So
Right. Yeah.
anyway, mixed bag. We'll be back next week to talk about part 7. That'll be the penultimate episode because there'll be one after that and then we're done. Although there is a lot of rumors that there's going to be another season of this show, so
Okay then.
they might announce that by the next week or the week after. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Once again, another long episode, but it is what it is. So follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to our website, TowerBabble.ca, to find everything we do, including a link to our Patreon, Patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast, where for as little as $5 a month, you can support us and get some additional content for your trouble. So until next week, may the Force be with you.